Alrighty, everybody, welcome on in. How is everybody doing? Welcome to the Central Committee stream. Hold on. All right. Welcome on in, folks, to the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA. It is Monday. We are live once again. How is everybody doing? Good morning, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Wherever you are in the world, welcome in to the Central Committee stream. Wow. Monday. Did I say Monday? What day did I say? Happy morning on the Monday. Hope you are doing well. I'm 1 month away from the Order of Romeo. Let's go. Chaotic, thank you for the tier 3. You're getting close to the Order of Romeo. I mean, sure. You're only 15 months away. You're practically there. Instead of a debate, how come about Ethan Piker stuffs I'm sorry, Ethan Piker. Wow. Instead of a debate, how about Hassan Piker stuffs Ethan Klein upside down and do a trash like high school? Ethan Piker is what Ethan Klein desires. He wishes. This is ultimately a psychosexual fixation. Like, that is fundamentally what it is. That's why, and that's why Ethan Klein and Destiny also get so mad at me, because Hassan and I are on really good terms. We're friendly, and he promotes me, and we respect each other, and I leave it at that, right? Like, I don't hyper fixate on Hassan. I like Hassan. We're friends. I have his back, but I'm like, if he goes, I don't get jealous if he goes out there and hangs with other people and goes on trips to Japan, you know, right? But you know, Ethan and Destiny are just sitting there seething. You know, they're seething about how much they should be his best friend. And that's really what the source of it is they're just sad, pathetic fucking losers. And I wish it was more than that, but ultimately, because they're fixated on Hassan and they've been rejected, they are now trying to get any ally they can to go after Hassan, right? Remember, the goal is destroying Hassan. If tomorrow Hassan came out and said that he supports Israel, do you think Ethan Klein would go, never mind, guys, he's changed on the most important issue of our day, supporting Israel. I love him now. Do you think that's how it would go? If Hassan had come out and said, you know what, guys, Bernie Sanders, he's a loser. I love Joe Biden. Do you think Destiny would have stopped, right? Like, let's just imagine that world for a minute. None of their hatreds of Hassan have anything to do with his politics. It has nothing to do with his arguments. It has nothing to do with his beliefs. It is a personal fixation. And I don't even think they would deny it if you said, yeah, if you asked them these questions. Maybe they would, because I don't know. But I somehow think they wouldn't. I think Ethan Klein would be perfectly happy to admit that his hatred of Hassan has absolutely nothing to do with Israel or the positions that Hassan takes on Israel. His hatred of Hassan has to do with Hassan being incredibly, incredibly sexy for Ethan, and it unlocking something deep inside of him. And now that he's lost him, now he's the baddie that he fumbled. He's got to get he can't handle seeing him constantly on his screen. The reason why I said Hassan went nuclear on Ethan is because of, hold on, let's pull up the post. He just posted it right before I went live. I'm not a drama content creator. I've stayed silent on Ethan since I said I'd rather talk in person. He can't handle a back and forth. That's why he only cries on Instagram stories where he can't see replies. That's why he deletes comments and bans subs and tries to dox Redditors. Coward. And really, I don't care. I don't understand. Like, I don't care whether or not you agree with Hassan or not, right? We all know this is true, right? Like, we all know this is true. There's no debating this point. Whether you're, you know, it is Ethan Klein, again, because it's not about Israel, okay? It feels like it's about Israel, which is what makes all of us jump into this fight, because it has the appearance of being politics. But Hassan knows something. He knows it's not about politics. That's why he's been like, all right, I'm pretty much just going to ignore Ethan, because he knows it's not about Israel, Palestine, right? What's happening is Ethan Klein is personally suffering a rejection. And the best thing you can do, it's an old saying, we say it here a lot, the best revenge is living well. And that's very true for dealing with a narcissist. If you have a narcissist in your life and you're finally broken up with them, whether it's a friend or a relationship or a relative or whoever, if you break away from a narcissist and you just thrive, they will fucking go insane. And that's exactly what's happened with Ethan Klein. Comment also on this one. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and bring these things up. And Ethan Klein is like one of those people who is kind of common on the internet these days, which is they did one thing correct, or they got one thing super lucky very early on social media, right? And I think Destiny and Ethan are almost identical people, honestly. I think Destiny and Ethan Klein are almost identical people. Destiny got, that's why they've allied so naturally. It's because they're the same kind, which is they're mediocrities, right? Who come from a family of privilege. And fundamentally, they got lucky in the early social media internet. Destiny got very early, he was one of the first people to like stream. He was a very early streamer. And so he was able to cultivate enough of an audience to become, and do it for a long enough time that he became kind of prominent, right? And Ethan Klein is lucky because he grabbed on virality very early as, making these comedic in big quotes videos, and grabbed a lot of attention. And then, and this is the part that's really, really, really fucking disgusting, is that Ethan Klein, his comedy was never funny, right? But he was able to draft a lot of sympathetic support from people on the internet who believe deeply in our rights to commentary, our right to critique, our right to criticize, our right to fair use, and the desire for this kind of bottom-up, grassroots, hey, us regular people, this is what the internet's about. It's about regular people being able to critique. It's about regular people being able to debate. It's about regular people being able to create. And we don't want these big corporations to control us. We don't want people that have money to control us and prevent us from criticizing and using fair use, right? We don't want people to troll using the DMCA. And Ethan Klein was like, I am the DMCA. I am the fair use defender. I want to criticize this guy and he's suing me and I'm going to make a case of it. I need your help, internet, for the right of fair use. And that's really why he got big. I mean, honestly, the comedy sucks. Like, let's be honest. Like, if you go back and watch Vape Nash, it's fucking boring. I never laughed. Even at the time, I didn't think it was funny. I thought it sucked, quite frankly. I was never an Ethan Klein fan because I have a functioning fucking brain. If I want to watch talented comedians, I will go watch a talented comedian. But now that Ethan Klein is finally being criticized, suddenly he wants to sue. He wants to use strategic lawsuits. He wants to troll, and he's just a scumbag. And I think this is one of the things that and it's the same thing with Destiny, right? Like, Destiny doesn't have any principles, right now, and he's trying to dox one of his former orbiters. Ethan, funny as fuck. What's the funniest thing Ethan has ever said? Please. I enjoyed Vape Nash. Do you think that shit holds up? Ethan openly called for harassment on Reddit employees. What a cowardly bitch. What a cowardly ass bitch. I mean, one of the funniest things is, Ethan and Destiny call other people lolcows when they are objectively lolcows. Like, people watch me for my political commentary, my political education, my experience. That's why they're watching me. They're not watching me to see, the hilarious fuck up I make, or for my personal drama, right? That's Ethan Klein and Destiny objectively. Yet they use, and you can tell about their anxiety about it because they're constantly saying lolcow, this person's a lolcow, this person's a lolcow, when it's actually them, and everybody knows it. Like, if you were to go on the doxing websites they're constantly promoting, their threads are quadrillion. They've got page after page because they're such fucking lolcows, and the people that they target even though they're politically in opposition to, you know, these doxing forums, we just don't have the threads because we're not lolcows. We just don't have the people that are interested in us because of us being dopey fucking mediocre losers. And everybody knows it. And you guys know it too. Even if you're a fan of them, you know I'm right. You know it's true. He and Destiny throw these tantrums when things don't go their way and throw out all their so-called morals out the window, and their cult members just eat it up because they don't care to hold them accountable. Because they don't, again, people do not watch Ethan Klein or Destiny because of their moral vision, right? Honestly, I think people just randomly end up in these places. if I'm being honest, it's just mere exposure effect. You know, like random people have some like something that bonds them deeply. Maybe something dramatic is happening in their life while they encountered Ethan, and his Vape Nation made them laugh. It was the first video they saw after their mom died, and they laughed. You know, it's that kind of shit. It's not like people going like, "Wow, I watched Ethan, and the way his comedy just." You know, it opened up my eyes, and he just lifts. He's just a font of mirth and happiness in this dark world. Like, no, nobody's watching this motherfucker for comedy. I mean, honestly, it would be kind of interesting to ask an Ethan Klein fan, what are you watching for at this point? We know why Destiny fans, the ones that still exist, are watching him, because they are vicious internet trolls who like to watch people get hurt. Like, it's very obvious why people watch Destiny at this point. But Ethan Klein, it's an open question. Now, he's real good at picking on people. He gives me Mean Girl vibes or some shit like that. He's always going to make fun of other people and shit. Ethan Klein is good at making fun of people that are not in the room. Did you guys see the guy who came on his stream and made fun of him to his face? Could someone find me that link? He just had some right winger on his stream, and the guy just roasted the shit out of him, and he and like the crew laughed louder than I've heard them laugh in months. The Nelk guy, by the way, the sun in the doors of hell, come to hear us. Anyway, Nelk boy, who's a Donald Trump guy, is on my stream now. Like, that's the other thing. Destiny and Ethan, and the reason why I'm lumping them together is because they're the same guy. Like, functionally, they are the same guy. Oh, God, I hate this fucking account. It's so funny. I called this guy out. I said, hey, Yeet, you're a stalker of streamers, and we all know that you're a stalker. And you have thousands of ban evasion accounts. And you're a freak, and we all know. And he blocked me. The Yeet guy. He used to be a huge Destiny fan, by the way. What a pussy. Why are you linking me this? Why did you link me this? Who linked me this shit? Why the fuck would you link me this? Are you fucking dumb as hell? This is what I mean with people online. Like, do you think Extra Emily has racial bias? If you do, you're a fucking idiot. Oh, but she said something that kind of sounds like the N-word, guys. She said something that kind of sounds like the N-word. See, all the people who are racist, they're not so bad. Shut the fuck up. That was me. I'm sorry. Yes, good for apologizing. You're lucky. I'm pissed off at you for linking that dumbass shit. This is Ethan Klein. Sean was kind of saying she does yesterday. LL, she said other stuff like the Q word. What the hell is the Q word? What the fuck is the Q word? Oh, Extra Emily and Fam did smear a pro-Palestinian restaurant as anti-Semitic. Queer? That's not a slur. She drops casual N-bombs. I don't think that's true. That's not true. One of the things I really hate about the internet, and this is going to be true, is when people try to go like, oh, haha, I found this reason, and that means this person is bad. I found some incident, and then I can characterize it as like they're bigoted and they're bad. And it's like, shut your fucking mouth. Shut the fuck up. You're annoying as fuck. You're stupid. That's not how people are. That's not how human beings exist. Fucking Tumblr ass behavior. Dumb as fuck. Here's this, you know, people oftentimes think of me as like a person who pushes for purity, but in reality, I'm the opposite. I do not. You know what I push for? Consistency and honesty and people being held to a standard of morality. I don't care if you slip up. I care what you stand for, what you do. It's like, I'll give you an example. AB on Ethan Klein's show, right? Like, I want to like AB. I want to be able to say like, hey, You know, he's just doing his job and things like that, and make a million excuses for him. But at a certain point, like Ethan says, his show is going to become a pro-Israel propaganda show. That's what Ethan Klein says. He's going to go to Israel and show you how diverse and good it is. Now, he's a white Israeli citizen who's Jewish, which is the dominant. It's like the analogy is like a white person going down to Alabama in 1960 and saying, I'm going to show you how free and open Selma is. That's not the person who is being oppressed. Go ahead, bring a Palestinian Arab into Israel and let's experience how they experience life. That is, you know, that is the reality. So like at a certain point, it's like, AB, are you going to be part of this project of Zionist propaganda? Or are you going to say once and for all, we're leaving and starting our own thing? And I want to just say this. I know nobody cares what I say on this issue because I'm not an Ethan fan. I've never been an Ethan fan. And I thought of Leftovers sucked. And honestly, you know what I liked about Leftovers, chat? When Leftovers was happening, I would stream longer because Hassan was offline on Twitch. So I would stream more because like he wasn't on Twitch. And the reality is that like, you know, the content was bad because Ethan was talking so much. So a lot of people who were true politics frogs, they didn't even go watch Leftovers. So I was pro Leftovers in the sense of just, you know, having more stream time. I'm being really fucking honest. It was terrible, and it was always terrible, and it was never funny. That's just the truth of it. Anyway, okay, what was I saying? Oh, I think Leftovers is what I learned about your stream. Awesome. If AB or any of the people in the crew left H3, it said it was because that Ethan Klein has become unhinged and they're uncomfortable. Do you know the bear hug they would get from the internet? I would bet you that if a bunch, even the people who have attacked me, I don't even give a fuck, honestly. Like if Dan left, if they all left and started their own show, the H4 podcast or whatever the fuck, they would probably have more viewers than Ethan within 6 months. Like think about it. Like they're the ones who do all the work in the show. It's not like Ethan and Gila are funny at this point. They're just bitter, rich racists. If they left that company and started their own shit, the bear hug they would get from the internet, from people from all over the political spectrum, would be unbelievable. There would be people, they would have, it would be an exodus, and they would be millionaires. That's the thing that gets me, is it's like, sure, there would be a small amount of risk, but they would make so much fucking money. And like, it would be so awesome. Ethan Klein would have to scramble with the remaining vestiges of his clout to try to hold this shit together. His latest stream has 500,000 views and 100,000 likes. Okay, let's check this out real quick before we watch more of this. YouTube H3, like H3 production or H3 podcast, right? Unmasking the harassment campaign against us. What a fucking loser, dude. Crew intervention? I can't handle this anymore. YouTube drama. LA influencer snark. It's the harassment campaign. This guy, all he does is harass people.
Hey, this is your host, Ethan.
11,000 like. What did they used to get? What did they used to get? I mean, 15,000. When were they actually popular? Oh, here you go. 29,000 likes, 1.2 million views. Fresh got his girlfriend pregnant and demands she gets rid of it. She's calling in. That's 10 months ago. So basically, he's got like a third as many likes. And by the way, this is, just so you understand, this is with him as the center of drama. This is with him as the center of the drama. Am I the asshole giving advice to crazy Redditors? 600,000 views 9 days ago. Reading insane Reddit, he's just lost his audience. Hassan Piker is a cowardly liar. 594k views. Denim's in the thumbnail. And Denims is completely unbothered. Honestly, I'm happy for her. Like, Denims has grown tremendously because of the bravery that she's shown in this stuff, and that's such a W for her. Congratulations to Denims. So funny. And like when the drama falls away, like, Denims and I, politics it is what it is. It has cycles where it's a little bit less relevant than others. I think it's going to continue to be highly relevant because Donald Trump is insane and he's doing insane shit. But like, just thank you, Ethan Klein. You are our best friend. It's so funny because like Ethan Klein pretends like there's some grand conspiracy against him. And I'll just say right now, the only thing that happens like whenever we talk is that we just laugh. We just laugh at him and go, what an idiot. He's really bad at this. He's really helping us out. Because like whenever you make content on Twitch in particular, the hardest thing is discoverability, right? And like what Ethan Klein is doing is he is delivering us pure discoverability to the people that we want discoverability for, which is left-leaning people who like Hassan. And Ethan is like, these are Hassan's biggest friends and defenders. And it's like, thanks, bud. Left-wing, wait, you're going to show me to left-leaning people who like Hassan and who watch streams? Well, I'll be so... Oh, no, stop. Please stop attacking me, Ethan. Oh, no, stop attacking me with clips from DGG from 8 years ago. Oh, God. Oh, no, whatever will I do? You're watching the same clip PewDiePie watched in 2019. Whatever will I do? Like, what do you... I mean, like, come on. Did you see the clips of Dan of H3? I don't give a fuck, honestly. I'm here after watching Hasanabe for the last few months. Exactly. It's just a huge W for me. And the thing is, if you're a political person and you watch politics, you'll realize that I have a lot of really interesting and in-depth opinions of my own. I have my own experiences. I'm well educated. I'm not like a Destiny who was a carpet cleaner for 6 months before he got fired and then got famous because he said the N-word, and then one day he decided to tell another illiterate streamer that racism is bad. Okay, like I was involved in politics for 6 years before I ever did a stream. All right, let's keep making fun of Ethan Klein because it's fun and it helps me get more views. All right, let's see here. This is a Nelk boy who is one of the creators who helped Trump win, right? Like, isn't this one of the creators that helped Trump win?
So a fan,
like, isn't this true? He thinks that the online left is secretly united to conspire against him. What's actually happening is that he's uniting the online left against him by being a Nimrod. Well, I mean, like, it's not just that. Ethan Klein is uniting us against him because he doesn't understand politics. And he doesn't understand that I'm defending Hassan, not because I'm clout driven, but because it's the opposite, you dumb fuck. It's because I'm politically aware of what Hassan's positions are, and we agree with the idea that Palestinian liberation is the most compelling moral issue of the planet right now, especially for Americans whose government is funding the genocide, right? There's horrible shit happening all over the world, but it is most acute for Americans in Gaza because that's our money and our government making that happen, right? There's horrifying genocides happening all over the place and wars where our country is involved, but not as actively as what's going on in Gaza. So we as Americans have a moral obligation to oppose our government where it is most acutely causing harm, right? This is just basic moral and political frameworks that make sense. And it's not to say we ignore the other atrocities in the world. In fact, leftists are some of the few people that ever even speak about them. At all. You think Ethan Klein gives a shit about a genocide in the Congo? You think Ethan Klein gives a shit about a genocide in Taiwan or a genocide in East Timor or a genocide in South Korea or a genocide in Ukraine or a genocide anywhere else? No, he doesn't give even an iota, a smidgen, a modicum of a shit. He's fucking nothing. And and he wants to go to Ethan Klein says, I want to go to Israel to tell you how beautiful and unracist Israel. Israel Deputy Knesset Speaker calls for killing all Palestinian men in Gaza, wiping out Jenin. Nissim Vaturi, Deputy Speaker of Israel's parliament and a member of the Netanyahu's Likud party, told ultra-Orthodox radio station Kol Barama, who is innocent in Gaza. Civilians went out and slaughtered people in cold blood. We need to separate the children and women and kill the adults in Gaza. We are being too considerate. He described the people in Gaza as scum and subhumans, claiming no one in the world wants the civilians in Gaza. Everyone is pushing them into Israel. We will soon turn Jenin into Gaza, he said, which is in the West Bank, adding that the Palestinian captives released out of the Gaza ceasefire deal should be sent there so they could be eliminated by Israeli forces. Erase Jenin. Don't start looking for the terrorists. If there's a terrorist in a house, take it out. Now, how is this any different than the Nazis? And the answer is there's nothing. This is actually just what the Nazis said about Jews, period. And eventually, like, they said the same thing. Like, it's a direct quote from a Hitler speech where Hitler's like, oh, everybody's condemning the way we're treating the Jews, but no one's going to take the Jews in as refugees. So if it's so wrong for us to target the Jews, why don't you take in the Jews, the beautiful, beneficent Jews? That's what Hitler said. That's exactly what Hitler said. Hitler also had a plan to deport Jews from Germany called the Madagascar Plan. The Madagascar Plan was a plan posed by the Nazi German government to forcibly relocate the Jewish population of Europe to the island of Madagascar. So this is just Hitlerism. Ethan and Gila called Ramallah a terrorist city. Sounds pretty similar. I mean, yeah, they just think Palestinians are terrorists. That's it. They just characterize Palestinians as terrorists. That's it. What is he? Is this like smelling salts? Like, what is this man consuming on air? Like, how many chat, look, how many prescription bottle, like, what is, oh my God. Man, this man is healthy, by the way. This man calls a pleasantly plump Pennsylvanian fat, and he's Beverly Hills pills maxing live on stream.
Wait, so this is just a random guy, though? Like, you respond to random trolls all the time, right?
Not so much random.
You don't ever feel like a nerd or doing that?
The biggest laugh I've heard on the stream in months. Listen to this laugh. This is Dan actually having fun for once.
Doing that? I don't know. I kind of do want to roast you right now, but like, today is embarrassing.
You can.
Like, you just sit on the shitter and you just go through DMs of people saying they don't fuck with you and you respond to them.
That's the thing. You don't understand what I'm doing.
More. Oh, he doesn't understand. Every content creator understands people posting shit about you on Reddit, you fucking loser. What a goddamn baby, dude. What a fucking loser, dude. Ethan Klein, listen to this laugh. This is what happens when someone's laughing for real, not because they're getting paid to fake it, which is every other time you hear Dan laugh.
Nerd or doing that?
Not so much random.
You don't ever feel like a nerd or doing that?
Random.
You don't ever feel like a nerd or doing that?
Random.
You don't ever feel like a nerd or doing that?
Look at his face. Look at his face. He can't even laugh at himself. You fucking loser. You can't even laugh at yourself. You fucking self-absorbed loser, dude. I hope you hear this in your dreams.
Doing that? Doing that? Like a nerd or doing that?
Fucking loser, dude. All right.
We're planning to go to Israel in June with my parents and all the kids. It's going to be such a great trip. And I'm actually really excited to go there. I want to show you guys.
You haven't been there in so long.
It's been a long fucking time. What I want to do is show you guys how I see Israel. Because you don't see that. When you listen to Hassan and you hear all these fucking left... like
the most important thing, chat, is that you see what a Beverly Hills, rich Beverly Hills Californian thinks of Israel, not the perspective of innocent families being bombed, right? So the people out there in the chat who are Destiny viewers or Ethan viewers, do you ever, for a moment, think about what it would be like to be in Gaza yourself with your family and just having your entire community destroyed? Do you never think about the children that just don't even understand what Hamas means, that are being killed? The countless people that are just apolitical, and that's like a lot of people in every country who are just trying to live their lives. It doesn't bother you at all. You don't feel anything for them. You think all of them are guilty? Like, literally, like, you really believe that? I think Ethan is doing this so that people would be afraid to take Ozempic and becoming a narcissistic idiot, so there's more Ozempic for the people with diabetes. Yeah, this is... like, here's the thing about Ozempic. Ethan Klein being able to lose the weight because of pharmaceutical help, he's just exposing himself as he really is, right? Like, when he was fat, he couldn't act like this because in his mind, he was lesser because he hated himself. The self-loathing was there to keep his narcissism in check, and that made him a lot more relatable as a content creator. But now that he's lost the weight and he feels it, like he doesn't have that like self-loathing as much. It's a little bit more subsumed. Now he can be exactly the type of fucking loser that he's always been. The full narcissism can come out.
Mega lefties talking about it like it's some super racist, like crazy, like Jim Crow style of society. Like, I can't wait to show you guys how beautiful, how multicultural, how like free it feels for people, or just it's a beautiful place. It is. It's one of the most diverse places I've ever been.
It literally declares itself a state just for the Jews, right? That where the Jews will be supreme. Can you imagine if we had a state in America that said, this is the state for white people, where white people are supreme, white Christians are supreme. And if you're Jewish, you are a second-class citizen. If you're black, you're second-class citizen. We would all recognize that instantly as fascist as fuck. But for some reason, Ethan can't see it. I don't know why.
So this is just a random guy, though. Like, you respond to random trolls all the time, right?
Not so much random.
You don't ever feel like a nerd or doing that? I don't know. I kind of do want to roast you right now, but like, it is embarrassing.
You can.
Like, you just sit on the shitter and you just go through DMs of people saying they don't fuck with you and you respond to them.
Bro. That's the thing. You don't understand what
No way. The guy who edited his podcast over disagreements on Israel's genocide, who spent the last year trying to get every pro-Palestinian voice banned, is visiting Israel like Michael Rappaport. He's going to show us all that there's no apartheid. Take us to the apartheid wall, Ethan. I need to stop seeing this guy on my feed, please. He did one funny video like 10 years ago. For the sake of us who tried muting or blocking him, I really love it if we could pretend this irrelevant freak doesn't exist. I understand why people feel this way if you're not involved, and I agree with you. But the reality is that Ethan's goal is to work with Donald Trump and to work with the far right, like the Nelk Boys, to try to, make being critical of Israel illegal in America. All right? Like, that's Ethan Klein's goal. You understand that, right? Like, Ethan Klein's goal is that anybody who says Israel is committing a genocide will be deplatformed and probably arrested. That's his fucking goal. And that's, and by the way, he doesn't, these people are deciding this because they're obsessed with Hassan personally. For 16 months, there's been a genocide going on in Gaza. Israel has the same ambitions for the West Bank, which has been under apartheid occupational rule since 1967. If your advocacy is slandering and deplatforming pro-Palestinian voices, just admit you love Israel and it's genocide. We know. I mean, obviously, right? At H3 Productions, nice try playing the genocide card, scumbag. You can't hide behind your advocacy. Being pro-Palestine doesn't absolve you of shit. What are you talking about, Ethan Klein? At no point did Hassan say, I am a perfect angel because I support. You're just saying random shit. If you actually cared about Palestine, you stop exploiting it as a shield to protect yourself from criticism. You use your activism like a get out of jail free card. You can't play that card for. What are you talking? Does Ethan Klein think that supporting Palestine is good for your career? Does Ethan Klein think that supporting Palestine is the easy thing to do in America? Are you fucking stupid? Absolve you of shit, by the way. Absolve you of shit. He thinks it's virtue signaling. Virtue signaling to what? The FBI to record you? For what? Democrat, prosecutors to put you in prison for a peaceful protest? What the fuck are you talking about? To get deplatformed and demonetized? What the fuck are you talking about, Ethan? Supporting Palestine is hard and risky. You know that, you fucking liar. What the fuck are you talking about? Virtue signaling to what? America, who just voted for Trump? Like, this doesn't even make sense. By the way, notice he doesn't deny. Remember when Ethan Klein used to deny being a Zionist? Remember when he used to say, I criticized the settlers in the West Bank and they're military combatants and they're legitimate targets. Remember that? Remember when he was trying to hide and pretend to be like pro-Palestinian? Fucking loser, dude. And look at this guy. Look at Ethan Klein trying to basically organize a doxing subreddit. But luckily for us, he's too lazy and stupid to do it himself. He's just hoping DGGers take care of it for him.
So again, I don't want to hold Reddit accountable in ways like that. It sounds fun and funny to do. And certainly would be some really probably potentially bad PR for them as well. I think they're trying to make an IPO now too, aren't they?
They are in the middle of an IPO.
It's also got like a really
So I guess he's trying to get Reddit declared anti-Semitic, which is very funny because Reddit has so many Hasbaran bots. Like, that's so funny.
Nasty anti-Semitic slant. A lot of the harassment coming too, which is not pretty. But I would say, like,
you know,
for
what's
example,
really awesome is, like, in Japan right now, Israel has a negative 61 net approval rating. Meaning, if you take all the people in Japan who support Israel and all the people who are have a negative view of Israel, and you take the number of people with a negative view and subtract the number of people who have a positive view, it's negative 61%. Israel has never been more unpopular in the world than it is right now. And the only reason that anyone could even pretend that Israel is in good shape is because of the United States of America using its full governmental power to suppress and block the rest of the world. Do you, like, even if you are an Israeli, do you understand how ridiculously unsustainable that is? Look at what's happening to Ukraine right now. Ethan Klein, I want you to look at what's happening to Ukraine, all right? And I want you to understand something. That's going to happen to Israel one day. Because one day, somebody's going to get elected into the United States government, and they're going to be like, why are we spending $300 billion on Israel? This is insane. And it's all going to walk away. They're going to walk away. And Israel is going to be the mortal enemy of all of its neighbors because they refuse to solve the Palestinian question with diplomacy and justice and fairness. You, the fascist in your country, your inability to deal with criticism is positioning Israel for, if you care about Israel existing, you should be trying to achieve peace, not attacking those of us who criticize Israel for doing a genocide. Do you think that's the healthy for Israel's long-term survival? It's delusional. I think one of the big problems is that the big supporters of Israel think that they're going to be able to control America forever. That's what they really truly believe. And that's just delusionally insane cope. They have nukes that won't happen. Do you understand that having nukes doesn't change? The Soviet Union fell and they had the most nukes. Like, what are they going to do? Immediately nuke all their neighbors and irradiate their own country? Like, what are you talking about, man? Nukes are not some sort of, like, government can never fall apart, get out of jail free card. South Africa had nukes too. Libya had a very progressed nuclear program. What are you talking about?
Just, what's this lady? Anna Solner. She's the head of communications and PR. For example, if I made a subreddit dedicated to her, Snark, that would be totally fine.
So Ethan Klein is basically saying that you should go and make snark subreddits around every single member of Reddit leadership to intimidate them into being pro-Israel. I'll say that again. Ethan Klein wants to have snark subreddits of everybody who works in Reddit to intimidate them to censor people who are not pro-Ethan Klein and pro-Israel. This guy, this is why people are like, why am I having to see this guy? Because this type of behavior needs to be opposed.
So again, I don't want to.
Did you not know about the Samson option? I know about the dumb Samson option. Shut the fuck up about the dumbass, worthless Samson option. Israel would nuke Europe. Shut the fuck up.
Accountable.
Ain't gonna do shit.
Like that. It sounds fun and funny to do, and certainly would be some really.
Israel can't even fight Iran alone. Like, the only reason that Israel wasn't absolutely flattened by the Iranian counterstrike is because Jordan, the United States, Iraq, you know, like European allies all swarmed to, like, defend Israel and shoot down their shit. Shoot down the missiles and the cruise missiles that were coming in. Israel can't even fight Iran on its own, let alone, like, nuking. Like, get the fuck out of here with this bullshit. This, like, myth that Israel is some powerful country. They can't even take over in a tiny strip of land directly contiguous to their borders. They're a fucking loser country.
Probably, potentially bad PR for them as well. I think they're trying to make an IPO now too, aren't they?
They are in the middle of an IPO.
Dan, they are in the middle of the IPO. They are in the middle of the IPO. Remember when people used to be like, Dan is cool, guys? Remember that? Those people are pretty quiet now. They are doing an IPO. We should harass them. Cool, Dan. You're a really cool guy.
It's also got like a really nasty anti-Semitic slant. A lot of the harassment coming too, which is not, you know.
Can you show an example of the nasty anti-Semitic slant? Can you show an example of the nasty anti-Semitic slant of subreddits? This is another thing that liar Heathen likes to do is he gets some anonymous account saying some slur or something, goes, see, this is Reddit's doing it. And it's like completely, I mean, it's just an absurd point. It's not even, everybody understands that there's a difference between random users who post something and then get banned for it versus the policy of a subreddit.
But I would say, like, for example, just what's this lady? Anna Solner. She's the head of communications and PR. For example, if I made a subreddit dedicated to her, Snark, that would be totally fine.
Reddit should ban his subreddit. Like, he like, honest to God, they should ban his subreddit for coordinating harassment of Reddit staff. Like this, like, what is going on here? Are these people even public figures? No. By the way, people like Ethan and Destiny just go like, anybody I'm talking about somehow becomes a public figure now. Or somebody made a YouTube video, so they're now a public figure. That's not what a public figure is. Not a public figure because you made a YouTube video or posted on social media. Shut the fuck up.
And it might be something that's worth looking into as well. To make my point that they don't want to fucking hear. So fuck Reddit. And it looks like there's just another issue brewing for Papa Ethan. And guess what? I'm not leaving the internet, bitches. So keep crying pack watch on you morons.
Guys, listen. He's not leaving the internet, okay? He's not leaving the internet, okay? He's not leading the internet, all right? The internet is leaving him. The internet is leaving him. The internet is leaving him. And this is with him being the center of attention. He's losing 660 subs a day. 660 subs a day on a podcast that is actively producing content. That's crazy. Dan said Hassan and Asmongold are similarly vile. Oh, let me listen to this.
This is radicalization happening in the chat room of this most popular political streamer who is endorsed, promoted, held up by Twitch. This is happening right in front of our fucking faces. And by the way,
second most popular political streamer.
You're right, behind Asmongold.
Who is similarly vile. So
I think that whole plot point is stupid. Asmongold doesn't talk about. I guess he hasn't. Whatever.
No, he does.
I don't care about it.
He does, and it's pretty vile.
Whatever. I don't want to get.
He doesn't care about conservatism and Trumpism. He's got a personal beef with Hassan, guys. The most important issue right now is defending Benjamin Netanyahu's war crimes. See, the thing is, Ethan Klein understands something, that very wealthy Zionists are not going to be targeted by the Trump administration. So why does he fucking care if you lose your abortion rights or trans people have to take the gender they don't identify with on their passports? Why the fuck does he care if, you know, you lose Social Security or your health care coverage or the national parks are destroyed? He'll just leave this country. Why would he care if wildfires sweep through his neighborhood, burning his house down?
Spend your time going after
I don't know if you
someone
saw this
who is-
chat, but they called him Nosferatu. Like, it's a Jewish, like, it's making fun of his nose.
Wait,
Oh,
they're
no,
calling him.
it's-
They're calling Bibi Nosferatu.
Which is like,
That's
you know,
just straight up anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and the fact that it's allowed is crazy to me.
What the fuck? I didn't even think about that. His chat is calling him Nosferatu,
Oh, wait, that's a vampire.
not
Yeah, but they're-
Feratu.
Oh, okay.
But they saying nose
They're
because
making
he's
it.
That's just how you spell it, you dumb fuck. That's just how you spell it, you dumbass. That's just you being anti-Semitic.
Jewish.
No, it's because he's Jewish.
Oh, okay.
Wait, no. It literally says Nosferatu. It doesn't say Nosferatu.
There's no E.
How do you
Okay.
spell it?
Are you talking
I
about
don't
the
know.
one that's on screen right now? Right there. Oh,
me go
maybe
back.
somebody else did.
Let me
I'm
go
just saying
back,
That one
'cause-
right there says the actual vampire name.
Okay, hold on.
This is the level that Ethan Klein is on, scrubbing through chat, trying to find a message that he can claim is bad, and thereby retroactively put it into the mouths of the streamer. This is the level of pathetic. Again, I mean, there's really no, this was only very, okay. This was put very concisely by, like, this is how it is. Like,
Trolls all the time, right? Oh. Like, you respond to random trolls all the time, right?
Not so much random.
You don't ever feel like a nerd or doing that? I don't know. I kind of do want to roast you right now, but like, it is embarrassing.
the man came onto his podcast, looked him directly in the eye. Look at the eye contact. All right, look at the eye contact that's happening here. A guy in a baseball cap that is too big. He looks like an NPC from Backyard Baseball is dominating you with eye contact and calling you a bitch, calling you a loser. Like, this is legitimately unbelievable. Like, you know, this guy, he's got low speed, but he probably has, you know, he's got like good batting on Backyard. He's got 4 stars in batting. He's a 1 star in speed. Pete Wheeler looking ass, exactly. Look at the eye contact, and let's flip the camera over to Ethan. Is Ethan looking at him, or is he looking to this? Let's see. Is Ethan not making eye contact? Eye contact, assertive dominance, hand forward, calling him a loser, calling him a nerd. Ethan Klein averting his eyes, looking down. Beta, beta. Oh man, this is why Ethan Klein doesn't want to take Hassan on. This is why Ethan Klein does not want to debate Hassan in person. Can you imagine how, I mean, listen, this is not toxic masculinity, all right? If Ethan Klein wants to break into tears, we will soothe him, all right? But it is still kind of funny. Like, if I was it's not just, it's more like maturity and, you know, God, wow, that's crazy. He was looking at the laughing staff, thinking how to punish them. Time to hit the button so you can get yelled at by your boss, Dan. Time to hit the button. You're gonna get a firm talking to. Dan, how dare you laugh at Ethan? Your job is to make him look good and agree with him and back him up, or else he won't pay you. I want to know how much they make. I want to know how much they make. How much does it cost, Dan? How much does it cost to buy your loyalty, Dan? Is it at least 7 figures? Is it at least 7 figures? Is it like mid 6 figures? How much? How much to buy your loyalty, Dan? It's at least 6 figures, right? It's at least 6 figures, right? AB just got a Rolex. Damn, they got a Rolex. Aren't Rolex is kind of crashing in value right now? Aren't Rolex crashing in value? Isn't it like the worst time ever to buy a Rolex? Like, wasn't there a huge Rolex bubble? Buy low, I guess, right, chat? The luxury watch market bubble has burst. I'm definitely seeing quite a lot of new models coming onto the market, as in freshly dated within this month and the last month. I think the big part of this down to how authorized dealer dynamic has changed. Previously, they would call up a customer for any watch and have it sold. Whereas nowadays, that's not the case because a large volume of their stock trades below retail price. Some of it quite considerably below retail price. And their customers aren't buying those watches, Faith added. Chief executive officers of watch manufacturers told participants of a trade show last week they will limit shipments to prevent retailers. I mean, hey, buy low, right? Maybe we'll have another luxury Rolex watch boom. Most of the H3 crew got a COVID check, which means they made less than $75K at the time. The International Criminal Court has been asked to investigate Biden and Blinken over war crimes allegations. It's time for a U.S.-based organization. It's the first time a U.S.-based organization has asked the court to probe a former president for complicity in alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. They should also investigate Kamala Harris. I know she's kind of irrelevant. But like...
Between 1776 and 2019, the US carried out over 392 military interventions worldwide, killing millions in the process and condemning many millions more to a life of agony and despair. A new world is struggling to be born. A phoenix will rise from the embers of empire in Gaza.
Genocide, Joe, you terrorize souls. When your eyes closed at night, how do you sleep? At night, how
can you guys imagine?
Genocide, Joe,
can you imagine just... Can you imagine just hearing Genocide Joe going to prison in The Hague and him dying in a fucking solitary confinement cell? Like the first presidents whose memoirs are smeared shit on the walls of his solitary confinement cell. I think solitary confinement should be banned except for Joe Biden. This case might face political pushback, but it doesn't change the message it sends. Impunity isn't a given. If the rule of law is supposed to mean anything, it has to apply across the board, not just to our enemies, but to our friends, and yes, to ourselves. War crimes prosecutor and Dawn board member Reed Browdy told Zateo, "We are at a turning point. The question is whether the ICC and international law will be more casualties buried under the rubble of Gaza. Dawn's filing, known as an Article 15 communication, details how U.S. officials provided ceaseless military and diplomatic support to Israel despite being aware that its aid was being used to commit the type of alleged war crimes which the ICC issued warrants against Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Accordingly, Dawn alleges that U.S. officials meet the legal standard for aiding and abetting such crimes. Such U.S. support included $17.9 billion of weapons transfers, intelligence sharing, targeting assistance, and the U.S. abstaining from, voting against, and vetoing several UN resolutions calling for a ceasefire and hostage deal or increased humanitarian aid over the course of 15 months. It's also included repeatedly sending weapons to Israel without congressional review, including weapons that were used in alleged war crimes like the killing of Hind. By continuously and unconditionally providing political support and military support to Israel while being fully aware of the specific crimes committed by Netanyahu, Gallant, and their subordinates, President Biden, Secretary Blinken, and Secretary Austin contributed intentionally to the commission of those crimes, while at least knowing the intention of the group to commit Israeli crimes, if not aiming of furthering such criminal activity. Now, what you guys are going to see is that Donald Trump will work overtime to protect them, because Donald Trump wants every president to be given impunity for supporting Israel's crimes. So Donald Trump claims he wants to go after Joe Biden, but he'll protect him here. Did Mike cover Hassan yet, chat? I mean, we're kind of covering it right now.
With pages of the Torah, pack watch, bitch. Hey, we're back.
Button press.
Sorry, I got, heater gamer moment. I do want to say Steve Huffman, Jen Wong, Drew Valero, do you think that is? Yeah. Christopher Slow.
Are they gonna let some like fucking loser who's hacking up a lung every day intimidate them?
I would very much not want you to experience how terrible it is to have a snark subreddit digging into you and everyone close to you.
By the way, when Hassan says digging into you, that he means people posting clips of the stuff he did on his show with millions of viewers. This is what Ethan Klein thinks is unfair.
You and organizing harassment in real life and online everywhere you go, because I just don't want that for anybody. So it would suck to make a snark it would suck to make a snark subreddit about the leadership of Reddit. It would be fun though, too.
At a certain point, like, isn't the impunity a little bit cringe that he, like, you know what I mean? Can you imagine if I said something like this?
It would be fun.
I'll say that probably exists.
What's that?
That probably exists, the way that you just
think
said
so?
That. I mean,
well, there's
nothing Redditors love more than complaining about Reddit.
I don't think so. I think we might be starting a movement. But if there is one, then God bless, let's join.
I don't think. Okay.
You know what I mean? Let's join the movement.
I won't be joining that.
If you can't beat them, join them. Literally.
I love how Dan copes with his like complicity by his little comments like, I don't know if that's true, or I won't be joining that, as if that means something. You already are part of it, Dan. I don't know who this guy was 2 weeks ago. I do not see this ending well for him. Nah, we're in a timeline where bad people get scot-free for their actions only if we let them. Exactly. Stop. Don't be this person. Don't be a little bitch. I like it because of how much it pisses off you. I mean, I don't even like, I just think of Ethan Klein as like very sad. And the thing is, he'll never break out. It doesn't matter how little, it's like, imagine hitching your wagon to Destiny. Like, Destiny's falling off hard. He's facing criminal and civil liability for, sexual cyber harassment. He's engulfed in his own legal battles. He's having an orbital rebellion, right? And you hitched your wagon to Epstein and said, like, Ethan Klein said, he's taking the baton from Destiny to be the main hater subreddit of Hassan. And it's like, imagine exchanging a large and diverse community that was like 7 times larger for the dying DGG Epstein viewers. Incredible. Does he think he's going to be the first person to disprove the apartheid state of Israel? The thing is, King Lucci, Ethan doesn't care about what happens to Palestinians, okay? Ethan Klein does not consider them worthy of equal rights to Israelis. He just doesn't care about Palestinians as human beings. And that's not an opinion that is based on his actions. The fucking sheer hypocrisy of Ethan trying to cry about being stalked and harassed a tiny bit on Reddit when working with Destiny to stalk and harass Hassan and anyone connected to him. I don't think he's being stalked and harassed. He's being criticized for his takes. I would condemn anybody for stalking or harassing Ethan. I don't support that at all. Showing people what he actually did to build the career he has and saying, hey, this you, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And that's part of what it is about being a content creator. Pretty cool. He seemed to know about this. He seemed to know this about him when there's several people Hassan could be talking about. A self-report of the highest order. Replying to shade that doesn't name you. Of course. Of course. All right, chat. I want to talk. We're going to come back to Ethan. I feel like I've gotten some Ethan stuff out of my system for now. It's at the point where it gets boring. Like, that's about as much as I want to do for right now. I want to talk about some like other stuff that's more interesting. It's just I saw Hassan, you know, going after Ethan, and I said, like, we got to cover this. We got to back Hassan up. You know what I mean? Like, I just retweeted both of Hassan's posts going after Ethan. And here's the thing. If you're tired of Ethan, I want to give you some advice. If you're tired of Ethan, the single best thing you can do is fight Ethan harder. It sounds paradoxical, but the reality is that the more criticism Ethan gets, the more people say they dislike him, the more people who unsubscribe, the more people that don't watch his shows, the more people that contacts his sponsors and say they're canceling their business because of their support of Ethan. Like, the more people that push back actually makes it more likely that Ethan shuts the fuck up and goes back to making, you know, whoopee cushion content or whatever the shit he does, you know, goes back to, you know, painting his face white and, you know, farting in a public place or whatever the fuck his best producing video is. Ethan wants Hassan to fight back. Incorrect. And by the way, Hassan is fighting back the smart way, which is deny Ethan a platform on his main stream and then punching him on places like Twitter. Public notice. Fluoride has been linked to many neurological effects, including IQ loss and also fertility issues. They want us to make us dumb sheep get a water filter. Fluoride just protects your teeth from tooth decay. Brush your teeth, bitch. Yeah, farting at Denny's. Is that an Ethan Klein video? I didn't even know. I was kidding. Like, I didn't even know. I didn't know. I legitimately did not know this. I didn't know. Like, I was kidding. I didn't know. Like, when I said going to fart in a public place, like, I didn't think that was actually the content that he makes, but apparently. Guys, what a talented comedian. What a talented comedian. Wow, shake up at MSNBC. Yeah, I saw that. Wow, they're going more to the right. Man, I can't wait to see their support. Let's talk about the hostage family thing that Ethan, you know, there was a hostage family that was killed by Israeli airstrikes last year, and that was immediately reported by Hamas. And there's this big like propaganda effort by the Israeli state to say that they like killed the children. Hamas killed the children, which is completely untrue. They reported that they were killed in an airstrike like last year, but they're trying to use this as justification for committing a genocide in Gaza, where over 20,000 children have been definitively killed. They're trying to say 2 children being killed justifies genocide, but 20,000 children being killed, well, that's just an accident.
Family of Israeli hostages turned up dead. Shock, horror. Everyone is 100% super genuinely really outraged about this. But what happened and what's the actual context behind it? You know, the things that Zionists tend not to want you to ask about. Well, here it is. Hamas already claimed way back in November 2023 that 3 members of the Bibas family, 2 children and the mother, Shiri, had been killed in an Israeli airstrike. This was a year and a half ago, and this was already known. And yet everyone is acting like they are shocked now to find that they are dead. Now, there's no real reason not to believe this, because obviously Israel has massacred indiscriminately at least 20,000 children, including many thousands of babies, during their genocide in Gaza. So clearly, the most likely cause of death here is an Israeli airstrike. And this is something that has been corroborated many times more by Israeli hostages themselves, who have said, for example, in this article by Haaretz, that they were held captive by Hamas, but they weren't worried about being killed by Hamas. They were worried about being randomly bombed by Israel, because Israel has destroyed around 80% of the buildings in Gaza. And guess where the hostages were held? In buildings in Gaza. When you randomly bomb shit, you are bound to massacre hostages while doing so. And that's precisely what obviously happened here. There's no reason to believe otherwise. You simply have to believe like the most generic colonial racist propaganda to think that.
I would say one thing to the fluoride guy in the chat, which is very funny. Of all the things to fixate on, you should get a water filter, chat, and you should filter your water. And you should try to get something that filters out heavy metals and, if you can, chemicals. You know, I think a whole home reverse osmosis filter is really expensive, but the way that America is collapsing, I think it may not be that crazy of an upgrade. You should get your water tested and you should get it monitored, because America is falling apart. And I lived in a city where they privatized the water system, and what happened is the water quality got worse and the cost of the water went up tremendously. And so, you know, that's what's coming to a city near you. And like the water quality would get really worse when it rained, because like the pipes, so the underground pipes had like leaks in them. And so when it would rain, water would get into the, you know, the stormwater system, but the stormwater system was compromised, but so was the water mains. And so the water table would go up, obviously, right? Because of the rain, and the rain would be tainted because it's washing, it's fertilizer in lawns and on agricultural fields, and, you know, chemicals and you know, spills from, you know, just industrial and commercial uses. And that would wash off the streets into the stormwater system, right? So that'd be really gross, tainted water, and it would cause a water quality to tremendously go down in the water system, right? This is a problem that occurs oftentimes with old water system. And in Pennsylvania, I mean, in some places in Pennsylvania, they still have water mains that are literally logs because they were put in place in like 1880. So like anytime, like personally, when I drink water, I filter it. Now, I don't have a reverse osmosis filter, but I at least try to get, a nice, decent, consumer grade filter to remove a lot of the shit, because America is falling apart, and I don't want you or your family to be affected by something that could be avoided by something as cheap as a water filter. There's 4 to 6 gallons of waste for every gallon of reverse osmosis produced. I use it under the sink. Yeah, that's fine. In booming Philadelphia neighborhoods, like, look at this shit. Oh, God damn it. Anyway, it said in booming Philadelphia neighborhoods, water quality is a problem. All right, let's keep going.
That Hamas would just decide, so out of all these hostages, we're going to intentionally kill specifically the 2 babies. Pretty much the worst thing that we could ever possibly do for our own cause, with absolutely no potential benefit to us whatsoever, whereas keeping them alive would come with plenty of potential benefit, as they could have been exchanged for Palestinian hostages. So there's no logical reason at all here to believe that they were not simply killed by Israeli bombs, as Hamas claims. And any ridiculous Israeli propaganda saying otherwise can be discarded out of hand. October 7th itself proves that Palestinian militants avoid targeting children. On October 7th, 36 children, that is, people under the age of 18, legal minors, were killed out of 1,200 total dead. That is 3% of total victims, and that heavily indicates that they avoided intentionally targeting children. And yet we are to believe that they just randomly decided to kill these 2 children, these 2 babies no less. Out of all of the hostages, these are the ones they just decided to randomly execute for no reason. You can only believe this shit if you see Palestinians as subhuman. It really is that simple. And for a point of comparison, 44% of the victims of Israel's genocidal assault on Gaza are children. There is simply no comparison here. Israel intentionally targets children quite clearly. Palestinians do not. So there is no reason to believe they suddenly did in this case. Now that that's out of the way.
And by the way, it's not just the numbers thing. We have testimony by American doctors that Israel targets children intentionally. 65 doctors, nurses, and paramedics, what we saw in Gaza. I worked as a trauma surgeon in Gaza from March 25th to April 8th. I volunteered in Ukraine and Haiti. I grew up in Flint, Michigan. I've seen violence and worked in conflict zones. But of the many things I stood out working in hospital Gaza, one got to me. Nearly every day I was there, I saw a new young child who had been shot in the head or chest, virtually all of whom went on to die, 13 in total. At the time, I assumed this was the work of a particularly sadistic soldier located nearby, but after returning home, I met an emergency medicine physician who had worked at a different hospital in Gaza 2 months before me. I couldn't believe the number of kids I saw shot in the head, I told him. To my surprise, he said, yeah, me too, every single day. But there is a group of independent observers who have seen this war from the ground day after day, volunteer healthcare workers. Through personal contacts in the medical community and a good deal of searching online, I was able to get in touch with American healthcare workers who have served in Gaza since October 7, 2023. Many have familiar or religious ties in the Middle East. Others, like me, do not, but felt compelled to volunteer in Gaza for a variety of reasons. Using questions based on my own observations and conversations with fellow doctors and nurses, I worked with the Times Opinion to poll 65 healthcare workers what they had seen in Gaza. 57, including myself, were willing to share their experiences on the record. The other 8 participated anonymously, either because they have family in Gaza or the West Bank, or because they fear workplace retaliation. This is what we saw. 44 doctors, nurses, and paramedics saw multiple cases of preteen children who had been shot in the head or chest in Gaza. One night in the emergency department, over the course of 4 hours, I saw 6 children between the ages of 5 and 12, all with single gunshot wounds to the skull. So it's not just like, oops a daisy, we bombed a building where the Hamas leader was and we accidentally killed a child that we didn't know was there. No, it is Israeli soldiers in Gaza intentionally targeting children to shoot them in the head.
Let's move on to something very important here, and that is context regarding how these people came to be hostages in the first place. Have you ever asked the question of why are there settlements around Gaza? So before moving on, I want to provide sort of like the perfect example of this sort of...
I could watch Zionists take the piss out of Destiny the whole day. Pro-Israeli streamer Destiny visits Israel, gets called son of a whore by Israeli. Good evening, can you help? Why are you photographing me? Why are you photographing me, you piece of a whore, you cocksucker? You son of a whore. Why are you photographing me? You son of a whore. Why are you photographing me, you person who gets fucked in the ass?
What does he want?
Bet no one told you it was going to be this way. This is the face Destiny makes when his wife would get fucked. Oh, man. What a fucking loser, dude.
Rhetoric going around about this, which is idiots, Zionists, genocidal morons, painting these babies as having been like massacred by...
That's the thing about Destiny, like... That was Destiny getting confronted in person, right? Suddenly the like beating his chest and being a tough guy suddenly ended immediately. He could only exist on the internet, man. He could only exist on the internet.
Hamas, and talking about how this hits so close to home for them and how they're so sad about this.
By the way, thank you guys for supporting the stream. Holy shit. Thank you, Mr. My Ruby Pearl, for the 5 gifties. I really appreciate you, and everybody else who resubbed. Thank you so much for supporting the stream. You guys are the best.
Yeah, they don't really seem to have much to say about the 20,000 plus children massacred by Israel in the exact same way as these children were. Bombing. Suddenly they care about dead kids. So let's watch
I legitimately don't understand it. Ethan, Gila, how come you don't care about the Palestinian dead kids? Like, I really, really, really want you to explain it. How can you stand by and see 20,000 dead children and go, okay, that's fine, and then lose your shit over 2? I mean, like, explain it. I just don't understand how you could possibly think like I see the 2 dead Israeli children and I think that is horrible. That's horrifying. That's terrible. But like, what the fuck, man? How are you like this?
Of Ramallah here, Klein here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like yesterday was a really difficult day for probably anybody that's Jewish, I feel like, especially anybody Israeli.
So it's a really difficult day for anyone that's Jewish. Whew, that is a doozy, isn't it? You feel like specific solidarity with someone when they are killed if they happen to be Jewish. That's it. That's all? They just share an ethnicity with you, so that makes you feel worse about their deaths? I don't really have that impulse like you. I don't know. That's just kind of a bit mask off, isn't it? Like, it was a difficult day for you that these 2 babies showed up dead, something that everyone already knew had happened. They were killed by Israel a year and a half ago. But it was a difficult day for you because I guess you were living under a rock and you didn't actually care about them at all, so you just found out that they were dead yesterday. or, you know, whenever this was filmed. And you didn't feel anything for the 20,000 Palestinians killed in the exact same way. But these ones shared a nationality and ethnicity with you. So this hit really close to home. It made it a really difficult day for you. Yet the days that your country massacred Palestinian babies in droves, you know, you just went around your day like it was normal, like nothing was even happening, didn't you?
It's just since October 7, this family specifically was the one that everybody was the most tortured about, because
you were not tortured about the literal thousands of family all massacred, bloodlines wiped out by you and yours in the IDF. You were not tortured about that. You were tortured about these people, though.
Because they kidnapped them. They kidnapped them separately because the dad first went out to try to fight off the terrorists.
Isn't that interesting how that
Okay, all right, chat. I want to explain something. Under international law, if you pick up a gun and start shooting at people, you lose your status as a civilian. You lose your status as a non-combatant. And if you know, like, that's just how international law works. Now, under international law, the Palestinians were justified to attack Israeli soldiers who were sanctioning them and who were embargoing them and who were sieging them. That's legitimate resistance under international law. If you pick up arms and go and fight, you are no longer a non-combatant. Now, the rest of the family remains non-combatants, but if you pick up a gun and you're killed, you're not a civilian death. You're a militia death. This is based on international law. You are not a civilian death. You are an irregular combatant. It doesn't mean that you are an unlawful combatant. On the contrary, you are a legal combatant. And if you were captured, you are entitled to protections as a prisoner of war. This is basic international law 101. But you're no longer a civilian.
Sort of fumbles the whole narrative here. You know, these are supposedly like civilian settlements, and then you have a person living there, supposedly a civilian, who just has a gun lying around ready to shoot at the people coming out of Gaza. That's not really a normal thing to have, is it? We'll get more into that in a second.
They came into the house, so they took the dad first separately. Then he didn't know what happened to the rest of his family, but they also took the mom and the kids, and the kids were 9 months old and 3 years old.
Yeah.
And she was holding them terrified. And
there's a video, there's a really disturbing video of them being kidnapped, and
the picture of her.
On the title, it says goes nuclear on Hassan, on Ethan. Did I miss something? Yeah, we read Hassan made a couple tweets this morning really giving it to Ethan and calling him a coward. So we were talking about that. And also and the reality that Ethan Klein is just like unhinged. So you missed it.
Her is like burned in everybody's head. There's a video.
In order to accept this sort of narrative, you need to just decontextualize all of this. Like, why were they there? Why are these settlements there? Who killed them? And also, who are they? Every little bit of relevant context has to be entirely removed from the narrative for the Israeli sob story to function.
There's a video, but
she's holding onto the kids, and the kids are just, you can imagine, it's just fucking terrible, disturbing bullshit.
And every time that they said they're gonna release hostages, it's like that's the first family that everybody wants to see.
Were they not paying any attention to the news? They announced that they were dead in November 2023. It's February 2025. You cared about them so much that you did not even bother to look at the news of them being killed by Israel.
Where are they? Like, you know, it's a baby. It's a baby.
Yeah.
And every time they did,
it's a baby. It's a baby. That never stopped anyone in the IDF before. I'm surprised that you suddenly care now.
And release them. They just wouldn't release them. Only a few weeks ago, they released the dad. And then when he came out, he said that they told him that they were dead, or that somebody told him that they were alive, so they kept like just messing with him.
They also were doing that to the Israeli public too.
Mm-hmm.
The poor Israeli public, the true victim here, the genocidal Israelis.
They told that they were hit by an IDF airstrike. At one point, they said that.
They say that about other hostages that ended up being alive. They go, oh, they're dead.
That happened.
Of course, Gaza is undergoing a fucking genocide. They don't have perfect information. You think they have like perfect seamless communications between them to know exactly what's happening to all of the hostages? No, you're fucking bombing the place. It's leveled to the ground. It's a fucking war zone. Not to mention it's Ethan Klein, by the way. I shouldn't just take his word on that. These guys make shit up constantly.
They just torture.
And then this week they
just torture the Israeli public, the genocidal Israelis are the victims.
finally said that on Thursday they were releasing 4 dead hostages, and within them was Shiri, Kfir, and Ariel, the Viva's mom and 2 babies. And it's honestly so hard.
It's so hard. And here come the
How come she doesn't have any of this kind of empathy for Palestinian children? I legitimately, like, chat, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. How could she not have empathy for Palestinian children? They're children. They're children. Like, I have empathy for this family, and I feel terrible for them. I really do. You know, recent immigrants from Argentina moved to the Gaza envelope. You know, they were captured in a breakout attempt by the concentration camp prisoners. And I feel bad for the kids because the kids don't know what's going on, right? You know, they're not guilty of the crimes of their parents. And I have empathy for people who feel terrible about these children being killed. But there's no difference between these children being killed and 20,000 innocent Palestinian children being killed. Israeli female soldier tossed film throwing grenades over West Bank fence. Jesus Christ.
fake white women tears. I'm sad that the clip ends before we can see them. But you see how this is, right? There's some babies who she's okay with being massacred. There's some babies who she doesn't shed a tear for. And there's certain babies who she's willing to let the white women tears flow for. That is Israel in a nutshell, basically. Now let's talk about why the fuck were these people there, right? Why the hell did you have your 2 little babies living with you a few kilometers away from Gaza? You know, this massive concentration camp where millions of people who you forcibly expelled there live, many of whom are from the very villages that you now occupy on its border. You expelled them so you could take them and live there. So why would anyone choose to live there, right? Why would you choose to live there? You could live anywhere else in Israel or like in any other country in the world, but you choose to live right next to the concentration camp? This family, so they are a family from Argentina and Peru, and they moved from Argentina and Peru to Israel voluntarily. They did not have to do that, they chose to do that. They are from a settlement called Nir Oz. Nir Oz is a settlement right next to Gaza, which was founded in 1955 as a Nahal settlement, aka a military settler movement. It was specifically designed to provide the first line of defense if the people who Israel had expelled to Gaza ever dared to try and leave and reclaim their homeland. As the Wikipedia article here notes, it is between Magen and Nirim. Magen should be noted for literally being named the Hebrew word for shield. They aren't exactly subtle with what these settlements are for, are they? So these people voluntarily chose to move from a relatively safe country on the other side of the world to Israel, and they chose to move to like literally the worst possible place in Israel you could choose to live if you actually cared about keeping your children safe. Like right next to the place where you keep your victims, where you keep the people who you expelled so you could have that land, in a settlement specifically designed to provide a bunch of human shields just in case something precisely like October 7th happens. Very important context to leave out. Now, this family was actually apparently physically incapable of not doing colonialism, because before October 7th, according to this article, they were thinking of moving to the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights is internationally recognized Syrian territory currently occupied by Israel, and they send their settlers there basically to do the same thing that they already did to Gaza, to settle it and like legitimize them keeping it. And this family, who firstly moved from Argentina and Peru to Israel, moved right onto the Gaza border, you know, not to like Tel Aviv or something, not somewhere relatively far away from where they keep their victims. No. The Gaza border, right there. And then when they finally decided, you know, the rockets that our victims keep launching at us are kind of inconvenient. Perhaps we should move somewhere else, somewhere safer. I know. The occupied Syrian Golan Heights. Go from colonizing one group of people to colonizing another. My God. Now, colonialism is a violent enterprise. Colonialism breeds resistance from its victims. And quite frankly, in this case, the people who put their babies at risk.
Someone find the clip of Hassan crying on leftovers when Israelis attacked that funeral. It was the funeral of an American. It was the funeral of an American journalist who was shot dead by Israeli soldiers intentionally. And Ethan Klein didn't give a fuck. And it was attacked by Israeli police and military. So they almost dropped the coffin.
Risk aren't Hamas, it's not the Palestinians. They are reacting to the colonialism of the Israelis. In every single instance, it's the Israelis. This family decided to move right next to Gaza, apparently so delusional as to think that they could do colonialism so brazenly on the very frontier, the border with their victims, and that the obviously foreseeable and inevitable backlash to that would never come to them. And they chose to live there with their children. They put them at risk. Israel puts them at risk by even having like a human shield ring of settlements around Gaza. You know, you would think they would have built like a ring of military bases around Gaza. You would think no one would want to live there. These people are so sadistic that many of them choose to. They want to be useful to the colonial project. You know, they want to be as close to Gaza as possible. To act, for one, as the first line of defense, as like a wall of human shields, and two, to legitimize Israel's colonial claim to Gaza and the surrounding area. The whole point of Israel having these people living right next to Gaza is because they know that what they do to Palestinians is going to breed retaliation in turn. And when that retaliation happens, they want the people there to bear the brunt of it. That's why they don't have military bases all in front of those settlements. That's why their first line of defense isn't soldiers, but supposedly civilian settlements. Because the people who died on October 7th were way more useful for Israel, dead than they were alive. The propaganda value of their deaths was immense and allowed them to carry out a genocide that they've had their eyes on carrying out since before their country was even founded. The responsibility for the deaths of these people, these two children massacred by an Israeli airstrike, is 100% on Israel and on their Israeli family. There are so many moments in this chain where they clearly did things to put themselves and their children in danger, expecting that they would never ever face any consequences for carrying out the most callous sort of settler colonialism in the world. One, they moved from South America to Israel in the first place. Why? But then they chose to move to a settlement right outside of Gaza. Like, not anywhere else, not anywhere further away from the front line, no, not anywhere where you had significantly less potential to be subject to the retaliatory violence of your victims. No, they had to move next to Gaza. And then third, what actually ended up happening to them is just Israel treated them like they did everyone else in Gaza. Random people to be bombed. Everything about this is Israel's responsibility. I don't want these people or anyone to die, and I certainly feel bad for the children. However, I also feel bad for the 20,000 Palestinian children killed in the exact same way, and these children's deaths are not any more meaningful or valuable than theirs. And the responsibility for them lies firmly in the hands of Israel and the Israeli settler colonial parents who put them in this situation in the first place. There is a gentleman and a scholar who once said that he believes that Israeli West Bank settlers are fair game.
I totally agree. On the West Bank, like, these people are... When you talk about like colonial settlers and stuff, like that's what's actually happening in the West Bank right now. And these people are like
a loader box.
I mean, more or less valid military targets, in my opinion.
It doesn't make any sense to say that West Bank settlers are valid military targets in your opinion, and yet settlers on the frontier with Gaza, literally living in settlements designed to provide human shields if the inmates of the concentration camp they live right next to ever break out, that those people aren't. The people living on the Gaza frontier and the people living on the West Bank frontier are one and the same in terms of actively doing colonialism in the worst, most confronting, most direct way possible, with zero plausible deniability. And if a West Bank settler callously brings their children to occupy a Palestinian's house mere kilometers away from where the victim who he stole the house from lives, the person who would be responsible if harm comes to those children when the inevitable retaliation comes would be those disgusting parents who knowingly and willingly put their children in danger by violently stealing other people's land and homes. And
I want to make the point that it still doesn't justify violence against the children, like by resistance forces, but it's an understandable consequence, right? You know, if you put a bunch of families on a military outpost and somebody are trying to fight the military outpost, the risk to those children is elevated. Now, if those children are directly intentionally targeted, that's still a crime. However, we understand that the culpability for the increased risk goes on the people that introduce the children. We call those people human shields. And we all understand that if you intentionally put human shields in the way of a conflict, that you are the one that is culpable. That doesn't relieve the other belligerent of the responsibility of not targeting civilians to the best of their ability.
It's honestly so hard. Yesterday I cried all day.
Yeah.
Man.
20,000 children have died in Gaza. 20,000 children have died minimum in Gaza. We have their verified corpses with their social security or their identification number. 20,000 children. And this is when you cry? You don't cry for them at all?
Leaving those people with nothing left in their life but to retaliate. The same exact principle applies to the Gaza border. If you're interested in learning more about the history of these border towns and the bullshit narrative of the poor, innocent hostages who in the first place were only even taken hostage to exchange them for actual Palestinian hostages, real ones taken by Israel, most of them held without any charge whatsoever, not that it would at all be valid for Israel to charge people they occupy with anything, but people who certainly cannot be said to be actively carrying out colonialism on the frontier, like the Israelis of the Gaza envelope settlements can be said to be doing. I have this video going over the history of the October 7th border settlements, why they're there, the purpose that they serve, the sort of people who choose to live in them, and you should check it out if you want a more in-depth look at that. But it's very important context for October 7th, for the hostages, for everything that has happened since, and it, as I said, makes no sense to be against the West Bank settlements, to say that you literally consider West Bank settlers to be military targets, and then to just contradict that by acting like those living in the Gaza border settlements are basically all like innocent children who have never done anything wrong in their life and who are not actively and willingly carrying out frontier settler colonialism in settlements that they full well know were designed to serve that purpose. They could move anywhere. They could have never moved there in the first place, but they chose to stay. Many of them have chosen to come back. What more is there to say? Colonialism is a violent enterprise. It breeds violence in response, and I'm not going to shed a single tear, nor take seriously the crocodile tears of those who are faking them, when that inevitable backlash happens. Ultimately, it's all the responsibility of Israel and the Zionists who support the root of the problem in the first place. It's the exact same reason why I would not shed a single tear when the frontier settlers in the American West were raided by Native Americans whose land they had stolen, nor if German settlers in Poland were attacked by Jewish partisans during World War II. You must have known what you were getting into.
I mean, there you have it, folks. Like, what else is there to say? What else is there to say? Okay, chat. I want to talk about the German elections for a bit. And, you know, if I were a person who was concerned about rising anti-Semitism, I might talk about the fact that the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, which is chock full of open and neo-Nazis doing well, is a risk.
This video is brought to you by...
It might be something you wanted to cover if you cared about politics.
Ground News. On Sunday, Germans went to vote in the 2025 federal election, with a massive turnout of 84%, the highest since 1987. It was clearly won by the centre-right Christian Democrats, with the Alternative for Deutschland coming second and doubling their vote share compared to 2021. Meanwhile, it was a disappointing night for Germany's incumbent parties. The centre-left Social Democratic Party, the Greens and the neoliberal Free Democratic Party all lost vote share, and the FDP and left-conservative PSW failed to make it into parliament. So, in this video, we'll look at Germany's election results, some recent political context, and what might happen next. We're getting remarkably close to 1 million subscribers, and currently 72% of you haven't yet subscribed. So lend us a hand and subscribe today. But first, a super quick recap. The 2021 federal election was narrowly won by Germany's centre-left Social Democratic Party, or SPD, led by Olaf Scholz, previously Merkel's vice-chancellor and finance minister, closely followed by the centre-right CDU-CSU party. The Greens came third, the Free Democratic Party, or FDP, fourth, and the AfD fifth. As a result, Scholz's SPD formed a coalition with the Greens and the FDP, known as the Traffic Light Coalition, because of their colours. The government started out on a strong footing, with the SPD's vote share of 25.7% being their best result since 2005. And according to a pre-election Infratest DIMAP poll,
is this the old one?
A majority of Germans, 51%, expected Scholz to be a good chancellor. Unfortunately, things didn't go to plan for the traffic light coalition.
What do you mean? It went exactly to plan. It went exactly to plan. Neoliberal. They went and did neoliberalism, warmongering. They were big supporters of the war in Ukraine. They were neoliberals. They did cuts. They did. What do you mean? What do you mean? They did everything they wanted to do. What do you mean?
Scholz's term coincided with a very unstable geopolitical environment, and his government's
which he leaned into.
The Ukraine war, the destruction of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines, and the Israel-Hamas war.
I guess they just blew up on their own, huh?
Or, as well as domestic issues like the economy, energy, and soaring crime rates, failed to convince voters. Arguably, the most...
energy prices going up are due to the fact that Germany, which was heavily reliant on Russian gas, got cut off from Russian gas by the war that he supported.
Difficult issue for the coalition has been energy. In February 2022, just 2.5 months into Scholz's term, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, sparking an energy and inflationary crisis in Europe that hit the German economy particularly hard, given its dependence on Russian oil and gas. The subsequent rise in energy prices both
which was, and this is the thing that's ironic, that was the Conservative Party that just won power, or is the biggest party. They were the party that made Germany reliant on Russian gas under Angela Merkel. So instead of investing in nuclear or renewable energy, they invested in Russian gas, and now they're being rewarded for ruining the German economy. Amazing.
German consumer confidence, but also the international competitiveness of German industry, which has been the backbone of Germany's export-led economy since the turn of the millennium. Rising energy prices interacted in uncomfortable ways with the coalition's green ambitions. In 2023, for instance, voters revolted against Scholz's attempt to ban the installation of new gas boilers.
By the way, chat, that is neoliberal Green Party shit in a nutshell. I'm going to ban the gas boilers. I'm not going to actually build abundant renewable energy, right? I'm just going to make your life more restrictive. Amazing.
And at least some voters were unhappy with Scholz's decision to stick with Merkel's nuclear power phase-out in the context of sky-high energy prices.
Insane. Actually insane. Oh, we're getting cut off from energy? Let's cut ourselves off from more energy.
Fueled by anxieties about green policies and immigration, the AfD surged in the polls and have polled ahead of all three coalition parties since mid-2023. While the Christian Democrats have been way ahead of the SPD since mid-2022. This has all been exacerbated by constant infighting between the FDP, who refused to countenance significant increases in borrowing, and the SPD.
And guess what happened, chat? The FDP, the neoliberals of the Liberal Party in Germany, is now out of parliament completely. They got 4.3% of the vote, not enough to get any seats. They're gone. Every single member of the Stoplight Coalition took significant losses. FDP to 0. The Greens had the least amount of losses. And then the SPD, this is their worst performance since the 19th century.
Who wanted further borrowing to fund an effective response to all the various crises afflicting Germany at the moment. This culminated in Scholz firing FDP Finance Minister Christian Lindner, and in November effectively imploding the coalition. Scholz then called a vote of confidence in his SPD Green minority government, which he lost, thus deciding to call an early election in February 2025. Now, this brings us to Sunday. Going into the election,
so the Liberals voted against giving him support, and then they were rewarded. So basically, this is what the FDP did. They blocked any kind of left-wing policies from the SPD or Greens. Not that there was anything that impressive on the table. They exploded this party. They exploded the coalition, forced early elections, and then did so poorly, they're out of office. It's like we have it's like the Democrats. It's the Democratic Party all over again. Classic liberals.
polls had the CDU on about 30%, the AFD on about 20%, the SPD on 15%, the Greens on 12%, the Left on 7%, and both the BSW and the FDP just under 5%, which is the threshold for representation in the German parliament. This meant that a lot would depend on whether or not these two parties made it to the 5% threshold, as if they didn't, the CDU and the SPD would probably be able to form a two-party grand coalition.
And by the way, chat, whenever the grand coalition is what it looks like right before utter collapse of the center. This is the last move before the utter collapse of the center. The SPD may actually be annihilated. And then the CDU, they're going to reach for their most closely ideologically aligned party, which is going to be the AFD. I can see the future, chat, just like what happened in 1930s. Angela Merkel's old seat has gone to a 31-year-old AFD politician who was a member of the neo-Nazi NPD's youth organization, of course.
But if they did, they'd probably win enough seats to force the CDU and SPD to find a third coalition partner. In the end, the polls were broadly correct. The CDU finished first with 28.5%.
Now, I am not a fan of the BSW personally. I think I probably would be a member of Die Linke if I was in Germany, but it is absolutely terrible that they didn't make 5%. It's bad they didn't make 5% because they are probably, I mean, they are one of the few parties that had any kind of pro-Palestine message. They have terrible takes on immigration. They're bad in the sense that they don't have a good eco-social, they're like, they try to pander to like boomer car manufacturing workers, like we love ICE engines and shit like that. So they have a lot of cringe elements, but overall it would have been better for them to be in the parliament, because I want the Greens, the SPD, and the CDU to be in one coalition, because that would make them all much more unpopular. The fact that the Green Party is going to escape being part of this grand coalition is going to protect the Green Party and allow them to criticize how shitty things are going to be. So the Greens are going to end up stealing votes from the left in the future because they're not going to be as discredited. They're going to enjoy the fact that they're not part of the grand coalition, and that's bad because the Green Party is bad. So they're going to be able to coast off of the failure of the CDU SPD coalition, and that's why I want to beat BSW to win. I want BSW to get to 5% just to force the Green Party to the coalition. And if you don't understand that, well, then you're stupid. And you don't understand that people reject the incumbents, and Greens are going to be able to gain because they're not going to be part of the incumbency.
4 percentage point increase from their 2021 results, meaning its leader.
It's like if you're Die Linke, where are you going to get voters? You're going to get voters from the SPD, you're going to get voters from the BSW, and you're going to get voters from Green, right? Those should be your main targets, right? So the Green Party is going to be harder to criticize if it's not part of the coalition. Die Linke. Is Die Linke also anti-immigration? No, they're the most pro-immigration party, obviously, because it's the left. Duh. Green Party sucks ass. A prominent member and his assistant threatened to dox me and tell my boss about my anti. Yes, I know, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. The Green Party is the most they are basically the Democrats. The FDP and the Greens are basically the Democrats. Like, if you want to understand America, it is these three parties right here. This is the Democratic Party, the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP. And it's just as bad. And you know what? Schultz was basically Biden. And it was a complete and utter failure to the maximum possible degree.
Friedrich Merz will likely be Germany's next chancellor. Next up in second were the AFD with 20.8%. And while this was a few points less than some pre-election polls had been predicting, it was still the party's highest ever result and double what they got in 2021. There was also a stark regional divide.
The fact that the AFD and the center-right, or which is really the right-wing party, gained seats shows a massive failure.
Here, with the AFD winning the most second votes, i.e. party list votes, in most constituencies in the East, apart from Berlin, neighbouring Potsdam and Leipzig, and the CDU winning most in the West. Support for the AfD was also higher among voters with a basic education, who were twice as likely to vote for the AfD as those with a higher education. Moving on, the SPD came third with 16.4%, their worst result at a federal election since 1887. Scholz took responsibility for this, calling it a bitter result.
Yay! Yay! Neoliberal centrism destroying the center left. Who knew? Of course. Who could have seen this coming?
And a defeat, but also took aim at the AfD.
I called them right-wing toasty.
We live in a democratic country, and we're fighting for democracy. That an extreme right party like the AfD can get results like this in Germany is not something we can just forget about. Scholz will continue.
Have you considered not doing austerity?
Government's formed.
Germans are addicted to austerity. They are addicted to doing austerity. They're like, when, like, I think of the Green Party as the most austerity-minded Germans. They're like, my house is 85 degrees in the summer and 50 degrees in the winter, and I love it.
Saying he wants the role of Chancellor in government, so we'll have to see what happens here. Next were the German Greens with 11.6%, a few points lower than 2021. Greens leader Robert Habeck said they wanted more, but also said that the Greens haven't collapsed like the other coalition parties, the SPD and the FDP. However, Habeck also suggested that Merz was responsible for the Greens' poor result, saying Merz had boosted the extremes, criticising Merz's decision earlier this year to seek support on a hardline immigration bill from the AfD. Die Linke came fifth with 8.8%, a very good result for the Socialist Left Party that was polling below 5% only a couple of weeks ago. Die Linke also came first with first-time voters and with 18.
You know what they did? They did really well on TikTok. I gotta get on TikTok, chat. I have to get on TikTok. Like, that's the secret, being on TikTok.
4-year-olds, followed in both cases by the AfD. Lastly, the neoliberal FDP and conservative left BSW missed out on parliamentary seats, winning 4.3% and 4.97%.
They got 4.97% chat, and they missed. If they had gotten 5, they would have gotten 30-some seats in the Congress, or, you know, the Bundestag. 0.03%. I think it would have been better to strategically vote for BSW. That's crazy, dude. Now, I don't support them, but as I said before, the reason why I would is I want to see a Green, SPD, CDU coalition so that these three parties can be discredited because they suck shit. But since Green is the Green Party is the final boss of leftism in Germany, because they absorb a lot of the people that might otherwise find themselves in Die Linke. Die Linke, you know what I mean? So that's the crisis is the Green Party is going to be the party that's like, we hate the status quo, but while we want to do more austerity. That's the problem. That's why I'm very pessimistic about Germany right now, because like the Green Party not being in the coalition is a huge L for the left.
Respectively. So what happens next? Well, luckily for Merz, because both the FD
Andor season 2 trailer dropped. Okay, we'll watch that after this. I'm excited. Please don't make it liberal and shit.
P and BSW fell below the 5% threshold. The CDU and the SPD now have a majority of seats between them, and so will probably form a two-party grand coalition. This is, in many ways, the best conceivable result for Merz, as the past few years have demonstrated.
No, it's not. The reality of what this is going to entail is this is just the austerity coalition, which is what Germans hate. The CDU and the SPD have done the worst they've like almost ever done as a combined total, and they're just going to go in there, and the only thing they're going to agree on is more cuts, and the German people are going to be even more pissed off because the German economy is going to be even more shit. I actually think fascism is going to win in Germany. Like, I hate to say it, but I think it's Jover. I think it's actually Jover. Austerity caused the AfD to rise, but we can solve it through austerity. They're going to do austerity and anti-immigrant policies. They're going to be like, what if we did what the AfD would do, but as a social democrat party? Oh no, why are we losing to the AfD? I just finished reading the deficit myth for the Discord reading list, and I'm wondering in what ways Germany can increase spending if they don't have monetary sovereignty. Who do you think runs the European Bank? The Germans do. The Germans control the euro. Like, what are you talking about? They run it for their own advantage. So yes, they have monetary sovereignty over all of Europe, but they're just dumb fucking austerity worshippers. Because Germans are fucking weird, and they are self-flagellators.
A three-party coalition, which would have had to be formed if another small party had won seats, is difficult to manage, and the SPD's poor result means they'll be very much the junior partner in the new government. As a final thing, it's worth stressing that while a return to grand coalition politics might feel like...
Did you ever play the game Social Democracy, where you're supposed to stop the Nazi Party from gaining power in Germany through political processes? I think I've seen that once. I'm not really sure. I don't really understand the systems. So basically, I have seen that, yes.
To normal in some sense. German politics is more fractured than it's ever been. The CDU and SPD achieved their lowest collective vote share ever. So perhaps the main question is whether they can actually stabilise German politics.
They can't.
Many other European countries have resorted to grand coalition politics to keep anti-establishment parties like the AfD out of government, but with mixed results. Excluding the AfD from government risks burnishing their anti-establishment credentials.
Of course. The establishment is hated, it's going to make them more popular.
And elections across the
Have I played Secret Hitler? Yes.
World suggest that parties benefit
I always win Secret Hitler
from being in opposition. There's a lot happening in German politics right now, and actually consuming news is pretty difficult in the current landscape. We're increasingly being flooded by misleading content by off news platform.
Stupid fucking ground news. Fuck you. All right. So yeah, I mean, it's not great. Like, it's crazy the BSW got 4.97%. That's nuts. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar instructed the Foreign Ministry 3 weeks ago to open quiet talks with far-right parties in France, Spain, and Sweden that have until now been officially boycotted by the Israeli government. Oh, wow. Oh, no. The Israelis are allying with the anti-Semites in Europe. Who could have seen that coming? Die Linke doing so well puts them in a good position to be an alternative opposition, and in fact they directly attack anti-immigration sentiment. But I think they're too far behind the 8 ball. German centrists are denying the AfD are fascists despite their politicians shouting Nazi slogan and their ties to the NPD, an open Nazi party. Yeah, we know. All right, chat, let's have a moment of very fun pop culture slop. Andor season 2. Let's see this.
We're in a war. You want to fight? Or you want to win?
Last night I dreamed that the world had turned around. All our hopes had come to be. The revolution starts now.
What a swell party this is.
Worry they're gonna go lean too much into action schlock, which, you know, that doesn't hype me at all. This is surprising. This is what trailer fucking idiots are gonna put in. Like, this is what the dumb, like, I like lightsaber people want to see. I want to see lasers. So God, I hope this isn't what it is.
Remember this moment. You're here, you're right here, and you're ready to fight.
I'm excited for Andor. Andor is great. You know, if you haven't seen Andor season 1, I highly recommend it. I really like this. It's the only piece of pop culture that is actually communicating revolutionary ideas, and not liberal revolutionary ideas, actual revolutionary ideas. Like, you got to fight fire with fire. You're not going to win by doing patty cake. This is my favorite speech in any pop culture in the last 10 years.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm. Kindness, kinship. Love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, they set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
Oh, that's great. There are 3 great monologues in the show. And 3 great monologues in the show that are just great pieces of revolutionary writing. One is a prison riot. One is the speech with the the mole. That guy is a mole within the equivalent of the basically the Empire's FBI, the Empire's CIA combined into one, right? The Ministry of State Security of the Empire. That guy is a mole in it. He's talking to Luthien, who is one of the leaders of the nascent rebellion, right? That was he was trying to back out and retire. And he was like, I just don't want to be the mole inside there anymore. And Luthien was saying, no, you have to be the mole. You have to continue to be the mole. Did you see this movie trailer? Yeah, we talked about that. I would have watched that. We're gonna watch that show as well. I really like these monologues. These are great.
My name is Kino Loy. I'm the day shift manager on level 5. I'm speaking to you from the command center on level 8. We are at this moment in control of the facility.
Is that the best you got?
How long we hang on, how far we get, how many of us make it out, all of that is now up to us. We have deactivated every floor in the facility. All the floors are cold. Wherever you are, right now, get up. Stop the work. Get out of your cells. Take charge and start climbing. They don't have enough guards, and they know it. If we wait until they figure that out, it'll be too late. We will never have a better chance than this. And I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want. We know they fried 100 men on level 2. We know that they are making up our sentences. As we go along, we know that no one outside here knows what's happening. And now we know that when they say we are being released, we are being transferred to some other prison to go and die. And that ends today. There is one way out. Right now. The building is ours. You need to run, climb, kill. You need to help each other. You see someone who's confused, someone who's lost. You get them moving and you keep them moving until we put this place behind us. There are 5,000 of us. If we can fight half as hard as we've been working, we will be home in no time. One way out! 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 Let's get out of here!
And then the last monologue, which is from the finale, is also great. This is by far and away. And the thing about Andor is, listen, we don't have pretentious about what this is. This is Star Wars slop, but they accidentally gave it to somebody who has artistic talent. They accidentally gave one of their stupid profit-seeking shows to somebody with artistic talent by accident. They wanted to make another dumb show about a character that was in one of their dumbass movies, and whoopsie-doopsie-daisy, the guy started studying Lenin. He started studying Lenin because he wanted to understand revolutions.
My name is Marva Karasi Andor. I'm honored to stand before you. I'm honored to be a daughter of Ferrix, and honored to be worthy of the stone. A stranger. Feel as if I can see you. I was 6, I think. First time I touched a funerary stone. Heard our music. Felt our history. Holding my sister's hand as we walked all the way from Fountain Square. Where you stand now, I've been more times than I can remember. I always wanted to be lifted. I was always eager, always waiting to be inspired. I remember every time it happened, every time the dead lifted me with their truth. And now I'm dead. And I yearn to lift you. Not because I want to shine or even be remembered. It's because I want you to go on. I want Ferrix to continue. In my waning hours, that's what comforts me most. But I fear for you. We've been sleeping. We've had each other and Ferrix, our work, our days. We had each other and they left us alone. We kept the trade lanes open and they left us alone. We took their money and ignored them. We kept their engines churning, and the moment they pulled away, we forgot them. Because we had each other. We had Ferrix. But we were sleeping. I've been sleeping. I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here. It's here, and it's not visiting anymore. It wants to stay. The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness. It is never more alive than when we sleep. It's easy for the dead to tell you to fight. And maybe it's true. Maybe fighting's useless. Perhaps it's too late. But I'll tell you this. If I could do it again, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards from the start. Fight the Empire!
Great stuff, man. Great stuff. The previous set piece was a heist, and the one thing this show does that's never been discussed before is the Star Wars saga is focused on funding the rebellion. It drives multiple plot points of the show. It's such an obvious driver of the story, except no one's ever done it before, so it can't be that obvious. How did you get there? This goes directly back to what I said before. Literally, I'm the classic old white guy who can't get enough history. Last 15 years, I've been reading all nonfiction. There's an amazing book called Young Stalin. The opening chapter is this incredible potential movie sequence where Stalin is part of staging a major bank robbery in a Georgian town in 1907. It involves 15 people and hookers and teamsters and all these things. Stalin was Lenin's financier. He was a thief. And the reason Lenin loved him so much was he kept bringing them money. They needed money. This shit all costs money. People got to eat. They got to get guns. You got to get stuff. It's knowing that and wanting to say something about that. Almost no one ever pays attention to that part of it. It's an underutilized area of storytelling. I'm obsessed with what my characters make and where they're getting their money. If you look at a picture of young Stalin, isn't he glamorous? He looks like Diego. We're not doing the Stalin show, but it's fascinating. All through every revolution, it's the same thing. It takes coin. Looks at Exodus, where they're trying to get money for Palestine. My underdog favorite character on this show is Mon Mothma's obnoxious husband. How did you come up with him? Perrin Furtha. I'm going to be very controversial here and say Perrin is one of my favorite characters. I love what Alistair Mackenzie's doing with it. But I don't want to give away anything really, but he's an Epicurean in the world of people who are interested in fighting and argue. He's like, man, why don't we just party? So, you know, he basically talks about how, so he's literally being inspired by the Russian Revolution. Have you seen this film? Nemec's manifesto is the part that I find the most boring, to be honest. All right, yeah, let's watch this. I wanted to watch this video chat about the German elections, which is Best D Marks making a video about AFD. Why will this not load correctly? What's going on? Okay. Woke Manchuria candidate. Send that to the mods on Discord.
The far-right AFD is surging. 1 in 5 Germans would now vote for them. Yet, while many insist the AFD are not Nazis, a more unsettling reality lurks just beneath the surface. The party thrives on the normalization of far-right ideology.
Germany for Germans, foreigners out.
And here's the real question. Have the seemingly anti-fascist liberal parties, through their own policies on migration, economic equality and foreign intervention, helped create the very conditions that fueled the AfD's rise?
Dass selbst ein Teil der Grünen inzwischen AfD-Position übernimmt, das nennen wir eine Zeitenwende.
Today, we're breaking down the AfD's secret and not-so-secret connections to neo-Nazi structures, the role of mainstream politics in normalizing the far right, and why the AfD is only a symptom of something much deeper. Subscribe, hit the like button, and let's get into it.
I love the Luffy avatar, Communist Luffy.
Before starting, I want to say a massive thank you to all those who support the channel on Patreon. All the research and editing takes up a huge amount of time, and your contributions make a huge difference. Every new Patreon matters, so check out the link in the description if you want to support this type of work. Thank you. In 2023, The Spiegel magazine uncovered a secret strategy meeting hosted by the AfD's youth wing, Junge Alternative, short JA. The exact location of the meeting remained secret for a long time. The invitation only mentioned a general area. The guests arrived discreetly. In late February, just over 50 people gathered at Hofrien in Uchte, Lower Saxony, to discuss the Roaring Twenties. One speaker was a certain Peter Steinborn, former leader of the youth wing of the neo-Nazi party called NPD. Another speaker was Dominik Asch, a JA leader who often wears a Thor's hammer around his neck, and who gave a lecture on meta-politics, in which he explains how to occupy the pre-political space to shift German discourse to the right. The AfD has been talking about this strategy openly for a long time. So why the secrecy? To understand, we must go back to the beginnings. The emergence of the AfD was a direct product of the international financial market crisis in 2010. Founded in 2013 by neoliberal economists and conservative elites, the AfD was initially a response to the euro crisis, much like other far-right, so-called Eurosceptic organizations in Europe. These so-called professors opposed the EU bailouts, not because they disagreed with the disastrous measures imposed on more dependent European countries, but because they wanted to protect German capital from weaker economies like Greece. But as global capitalism continued to unravel after the shock, the AfD adapted. By 2015, with the arrival of refugees fleeing imperialist wars, the party clearly had shifted gears, embracing a racist rhetoric to redirect working-class anger away from the ruling class. It achieved quick success. The media and sections of the German bourgeoisie tolerated this shift, using the AfD to push politics further to the right. On March 25, 2010, Chancellor Angela Merkel said at an EU summit that she agreed to the first bailout package for Greece. The justification of her decision as "without alternative" became a widely used phrase and served as an inspiration for the name of the AfD. The emergence and growth of far-right politics reflects a broader crisis of hegemony. One historical example is, of course, the rise of the NSDAP during the hyperinflation in the 20s. These crises facilitate the bourgeoisie's blaming of minorities and the so-called far left for society's problems, directing anger away from the rich through constructing a narrative of national decline and racial purity. According to the Comintern or Italian communist Antonio Gramsci's analyses, fascism emerges as a response to the dominant ideology's failure to pacify the working class through peaceful means.
And that's what we're seeing in America as well, right? The Democratic Party failed to pacify the young people and their opposition to the Israeli genocide, so they intentionally handed the country over to Donald Trump, and they say they don't want to resist him and they're going to work with him as much as they can. They understand, like, you understand that a Democrat is more aligned with a Nazi than they are with a democratic socialist, right? Like, you guys understand that, right? If you don't agree with that, you are wrong. And that's what we saw in Germany when the Nazis took power. The liberals, they allied with the fucking Nazis. And then when they got suppressed and their parties banned, you know what they did? They became apathetic. The liberal Germans were not the ones who fought back against the Hitlerites. They worked for them. They allied with them and they closed their eyes and they said, it's not my concern. When the Nazis were rounding up Jews, liberals voted to give the Nazis power in the Bundestag, in the Enabling Act, and then their parties were banned and they went away and they did nothing. They didn't fight back and they never will.
Acquiring openly authoritarian tools to crush proletarian movements to preserve the capitalist order. Quote, it became clear after the war that it was impossible for the Italian bourgeoisie to go on ruling with a democratic system. For now, there's no need of this. Bourgeois democratic respectability is still a requirement to gain mainstream support. The AfD figure that represents that is the woman at the head of the German far-right party. Alice Weidel, or as a tweet called her, lesbian wine mom Hitler, is the co-leader of the AfD and her party's chancellor candidate for the coming elections, and the most popular one in Germany. The former investment banker who lives in Switzerland presents herself as a champion of the ordinary people, ranting against the so-called global elites, undermining German nationhood, while working with the rich herself. We've talked about the exact...
Of course, because fascism springs out of the capitalist class. It serves and by and for the capitalist class. And that's what it will always be for.
Exact same hypocrisy regarding Giorgia Meloni. Another glaring double standard is her advocacy for traditional heterosexual relationships, despite being in a same-sex partnership with a Sri Lankan-born woman.
Ich bin nicht queer, sondern ich bin mit einer Frau verheiratet, die ich seit 20 Jahren kenne. Wir haben 2 gemeinsame Kinder.
On the topic of prison sentences for homosexuality, one AfD parliament member said we should do that in Germany too. But her main issue is, of course, immigration. Much like other far-right racists, she described multiculturalism as a failed concept, and warned of the Islamization of Germany, spreading replacement theory conspiracies, calling for a return to a Germany for Germans, dreaming of a fortress Europa. The former co-leader of the party alongside Weidel stated, "We must close the borders and then endure the cruel images." On the topic of migration, AfD politicians have put out statements reminiscent of the most Hitlerite of Hitlerites. We must, of course, dispose of such people. The refugee doesn't care at which border, Greek or German, he dies. The whole development we are witnessing right now, the creation of a mixed peoples to erase national identities, and with that, the surrender of sovereignty to the EU, is simply unbearable. And with this guy, it gets especially ugly. I have a vision now. If things go well in Germany, we will eventually have a kind of apartheid state, like in South Africa back then, where whites just somehow keep the rest in check. Once we finally get there, we'll line them all up against the wall, dig a pit, throw them all in, and dump quicklime on top. Now, hearing the word deportation over and over again might seem almost normalized in the former Hitler country, because it is.
Would you force them back to Syria?
Deportation ist ein Begriff, den wir überhaupt nicht verwenden. Das ist ein Nazi-Begriff und Zwangsdeportation gibt es für uns überhaupt nicht. Zum Schluss auch mit Abschiebung, natürlich. Das ist Teil des deutschen Rechtssystems, auch des europäischen Rechtssystems. Rückführung, Abschiebung. Abschiebung ist der fachliche Begriff bei der Polizei.
You don't like the word deportation because of its historical connotations, but whatever you call it, that's the reality for these people, isn't it?
Wenn Sie das Deportation nennen, hat das einen völlig falschen Zungenschlag. Das wollen wir nicht.
And again, they're just playing a euphemistic game for the exact same policies that any other fascist would ever want.
People forget that before the systemic mass extermination of Jewish people, the Nazis called for deportations to create a physically cleansed Germany, free of Jews, for instance, by deporting Jews out of their homes into ghettos and to drive them into Soviet territory. Although, needless to say, supporting genocide is also still normal for ruling German parties. Today, virtually all the major parties are in favor of deportations. According to liberal logic, if the center-left parties didn't argue for it, they would lose voters to the far right. So to them, stopping the far right means becoming the far right themselves. But also, they serve to create scapegoats such as migrants, anti-Semitic Muslims, and so-called cultural elites to direct anger away from those in power. The Greens and the SPD, despite their progressive anti-fascist branding, frame migration as a security issue, thus contributing to the dehumanization of migrants and reinforcing the narrative that they are a threat to social cohesion. This rhetoric not only legitimizes the AfD's xenophobic agenda, but also undermines solidarity among the working class, dividing it along ethnic lines. But much like Italy's Giorgia Meloni, Alice Weidel is still the quote-unquote polished bourgeois democratic face of the AfD. So much so that neo-Nazis online call her a puppet and a traitor.
It is so funny. It is actually legitimately funny that the leader of the AfD is a lesbian married to a brown woman. Like, that is very, very funny. That is very funny. Like, they have to do identity politics. They're so liberal, they have to do identity politics. Incredible.
Especially after she said that Hitler was a communist.
Back then, during the Third Reich, the National Socialists, as the word says, they were socialists. Adolf Hitler considered,
so.
Yeah.
They nationalized industries like crazy.
Yes, absolutely. He was a communist, and he considered himself as a socialist.
What they'd like to see is another prominent AfD leader at the top. One who before Weidel became known internationally was the most famous AfD figure, and that man is waiting in the wings. Björn Höcke is a leading figure of the AfD and head of the party in Thüringen. Influenced by his anti-communist father, he began to work as a teacher after studying sports and history. In an NPD magazine, it's pretty much confirmed that he wrote articles under the pseudonym Landolf Ladig, praising the ideas of the NPD, glorifying the Nazi regime, claiming that foreign powers have been envious of the Germans' discipline, and spoke of a revolution brought closer by self-amplifying crisis dynamics. The identitarian system opposition must take the lead in this revolution to introduce the organic market economy based on racial biology. The publisher of the magazine is a close friend of Höcke, one certain Thorsten Heise, a current leader of the NPD and one of the most influential German far-right ideologues. The convicted neo-Nazi has organized skinhead concerts and Nazi gatherings. Following the Holocaust denier David Irving, Höcke stated in a letter that the air raids on Dresden in 1945 were a violation of international law, quote, "Never before in world history, and never afterward, were so many people moved from life to death in such a short time." Höcke had to promise his school administration that he would never again publicly express such views as a teacher. In 2010, at the commemoration of the Dresden bombings, he demonstrated alongside neo-Nazis. According to a former student, Höcke, as a teacher, repeatedly praised the work of Psychology of the Masses by Gustave Le Bon and often spoke about charisma, told stories of his grandfather's meeting with Adolf Hitler, and described Hitler's
What they talk about now is called metapolitics. Like, what are the goal of the fascist movement in the world today is they have this concept they call metapolitics, which is basically the idea that in order to control politics, you need to not control politics itself, but rather the pre-political cultural discussion, right? So an example of that would be Asmongold, right? Or Aiden Ross. Neither one of them are actually, Asmongold has become more like actively political, but they are just like, they're sources of a certain type of demographic that you want to target. They're not like intelligent political figures who have any knowledge, but you prime them with certain beliefs and their audiences with certain beliefs, and then you introduce them with political figures that are aligned with those beliefs. So you catch people with political messaging in environments where they're not expecting political messaging, and so they don't have the right level of discernment, the right level of like skepticism. A propagandistic lie like Sweet Baby Inc. making video games bad which is I talked about with Nathan Grayson. That's exactly what the right wing is now doing. Is they're coming after our video games, and it's the queers, and it's the DEI folks. It's not the corporations. It's not the rich people, right? It's not EA that's making games bad. It's some trans developer somewhere. Hello, I'm German and what? Okay, I need to actually, so many people replied to that, so I need to look at that. Hello, I'm German and ashamed of the election results. It's very bad, an absolute catastrophe. In my village, AFD is over 40%. I was very angry and sad about that. Well, it's not over yet, but I would say you guys are in bad shape because I think the CDU SPD coalition is just going to do austerity and piss more people off, and the quality of life and standard of living is just going to get worse. And there's probably going to be a recession because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is probably going to cause a recession in the US, and that's going to do a catastrophic recession across the rest of the world. So I think you guys are in trouble.
Blue eyes as a central element of the Führer cult. He was fascinated by Nordic mythology and regularly wore a Mjolnir pendant around his neck. 2 years later, he called the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin a monument of shame, invoked the idea of a reversal of history, demanding that Germany stop its culture of remembrance and reclaim its identity. In speeches, he refers to a 1,000-year Germany, a phrase that reminds of Hitler's concept of the 1,000-year Reich, and uses Nazi concepts like Lebensraum. His 2018 book includes passages eerily similar to the works of SS figures. I am convinced that the Germans' longing for a historical figure who will one day heal the wounds in the nation, overcome the divisions and put things in order is deeply rooted in our souls. In 2019, media reports began revealing that Höcke attended secret far-right meetings where he discussed plans for remigration, a euphemism for ethnic cleansing used by right-wing extremists. In a 2021 speech, he got fined 13,000 euros for using a forbidden Sturmabteilung slogan, Alles für Deutschland, everything for Germany.
Sage ich ja, alles für unsere Heimat, alles für Sachsen-Anhalt, alles für Deutschland.
Just last year, he was banned again for chanting the first part, encouraging the audience to reply with the rest. While the National Party leadership maintains a facade of respectability, Höcke is a direct link between AfD politics and hardcore neo-Nazi ideology. And this is very important to understand. Fascism is not something that wins or loses during one election. It is the result of a systemic shift over a long period of time. Take the CDU-CSU Conservative Party, for instance, which invoked the Brandmauer firewall against any cooperation with the AfD. But over time, they've been gradually softening this stance, and this year, the CDU has finally cooperated with the AfD in the parliament for the first time, a historic turning point, opening up the possibility to have a far-right party in the German government for the first time since World War II. Also, take the complicity of the liberal parties, which are ultimately constrained by their commitment to maintain the capitalist order, prioritizing economic stability and the interests of the bourgeoisie over the needs of marginalized groups, normalizing AfD discourse and shifting the Overton window further to the right. The SPD during the Weimar Republic, which had positioned itself as a defender of the working class, repeatedly compromised with conservative forces to maintain political stability, as seen in the SPD's collaboration in suppressing the revolutionary movement by collaborating with fascists, and its support for austerity measures during the Great Depression.
And here we go again.
And enough has been said about the centrist party's role during that time. The main report at the 7th World Congress of the Comintern in the 30s put it very well. Quote, "Before the establishment of a fascist dictatorship, bourgeois governments usually pass through a number of preliminary stages and adopt a number of reactionary measures which directly facilitate the accession to power of fascism. Whoever does not fight the reactionary measures of the bourgeoisie and the growth of fascism at these preparatory stages is not in a position to prevent the victory of fascism, but on the contrary, facilitates that victory." However, believe it or not, Höcke is still just the so-called moderate wing compared to other members of the AfD, slowly but surely gaining more and more influence in the emerging party. Publicly, the AfD tries to maintain distance from neo-Nazi organizations. When the NPD encouraged its supporters to vote AfD, the party quickly distanced itself. While the Communist Party of Germany was quickly banned by the post-war West German government, the NPD was left untouched and remains so to this day. It emerged out of a Nazi organization whose members defaced synagogues with swastikas and demanded that Jews leave Germany. The AfD has a so-called incompatibility list on paper, but evidence tells a different story, making this list meaningless.
Arbeit for Deutschland? Wow. If you guys don't know this, over the concentration camp gates, it would say Arbeit macht frei, or work makes you free.
Let's talk about some of these isolated cases which seem to happen over and over again. One such case is Andreas Kalbitz, once one of the AfD's most powerful figures. He attended neo-Nazi marches and even a gathering of a banned group linked to the Hitler Youth. The AfD kicked him out, not for his ideology, but as a strategic move to avoid scrutiny. Yet, he still holds a seat in Brandenburg's state parliament under the AfD faction. In one speech, he said openly what others don't dare to do. Quote, "The AfD is the last evolutionary chance of this country. After that, it's just helmets on." But these so-called isolated cases are anything but rare. Studies show that the AfD gained traction where the NPD was strong. It is argued that the open Nazi party laid the groundwork for the AfD's normalization. Behind the scenes, AfD parliamentary offices have hired former NPD candidates and individuals from banned organizations. And these guys are not just at the bottom, but linked to the leadership. Quote, "We differ from the NPD primarily through our bourgeois support base, not so much in terms of content." But it doesn't stop there. One former NPD member who worked as a staffer for the AfD is Marcel Grauf. He's known for having said the following things. "I so desperately wish for a civil war and millions of dead. Women, children, I don't care. It would be so beautiful. I want to piss on corpses and dance on graves. Sieg Heil." At least we now have so many foreigners in the country that a Holocaust would be worthwhile again. The fact that they generally tend to subhuman behavior is already due to their race.
Subhuman behavior due to their race? That's just calling them subhuman. Actual German Nazis. Insane. It's so funny that within like 30 years of Germany unifying, they're like, time to be Nazis again!
This, surprise surprise, was of course not an isolated case. Another Hitlerite hired by an AfD deputy is convicted neo-Nazi Mario Müller. In Brandenburg, the AfD faction's top candidate was active in the Spreelichter, a group banned in 2012 for its neo-Nazi ideology. These are just a few examples out of many. AfD youth members have been photographed training in combat sports with members of banned Nazi groups. When confronted, the AfD brushed it off as just, quote, "a normal sports club." What is considered normal to many Germans has been shown to be open Nazism and genocide in history already. The fascist movement does not need to win in government in order to fight the danger of the workers' movement. Much like in Italy, where the fasci fought proletarian power to defend private property, the far right today utilizes the threat of the strengthening of left-wing extremism to legitimize support. Quote, "Take the left-wing extremist threat seriously and participate in all possible measures to finally rid the German national body of this tumor."
That's pretty much identical to the Nazis.
Kids of stoned parents should be threatened that next time they'll end up underground. Deport Antifa to Buchenwald, work instead of left-wing terror. The Nazis viewed communists as their main political enemies, and many were among the first detainees in concentration camps. The Bolshevik threat was used by Hitler to centralize state power. While communist organizing is weak at the moment, there is no need to institute a fascist system and undermine formal bourgeois freedoms. But the international progressive and communist movement is growing, and the threat of fascism grows in a dialectical relationship to it. Quote, "In short, democracy organized fascism when it felt it could no longer resist the pressure of the working class in conditions even of only formal freedom."
When your mass movement becomes big, and then they will try to suppress you, they will come out with fascism. So before you can have socialism, the monopoly capitalist class will unleash fascism.
And you can see them directly doing it. Like, this isn't even a theory anymore. You can literally see them doing it directly. Elon Musk is in the White House. They're literally doing, and what are they trying to do? Ban competitors from China. Like, it's not even a theory. It's just directly happening. And what are the Democrats doing, guys? What are the Democrats doing? Remember, the Democratic Party is the party of the bourgeoisie, so they're letting them do it. They're not, oh, God is still on his throne. I'm Hakeem Jeffries. They don't give a shit. Because to the enemy of the Democratic Party is the same enemy of the fascist movement, which is an actual left wing. So they're happy to help.
Pretext, huh? They use chauvinism against immigrants, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and also many other tricks just to hide the roots of the crisis.
As the contradictions of the imperialist system deepen, poverty, climate change, and war continue to drive mass migration. Consequences of a global system of exploitation that overwhelmingly benefits capitalists in wealthy nations. Just as they failed a century ago, liberal parties today are incapable of stopping the rise of fascism when they themselves facilitate its rise. What's needed is a movement that stands in defense of the exploited and marginalized. Fascism may not take full control in the immediate future, but it doesn't have to. The fascist movement is already growing, while the liberal capitalist order, just as it is right now, is more than enough of a catastrophe, destroying the planet, impoverishing the working class, and enabling genocide. The time to organize is now, before it's too late.
Wow. Honestly, everybody, if you're not subscribed to Bestie Marks, what are you even doing with your life? I just love his voice too. It's just so buttery smooth. When you ask what the Dems are doing, this is what the Dems are doing. Pod save it, Mark. Bill Maher! I feel like Hassan is going to watch this just to punish all of us. I feel like Hassan will watch this just to make us all mauled. Like, legitimately to make us suffer. All right, chat. We've got a new John Oliver. So let's watch this. New John Oliver on content moderation. It's Friday. Excuse me. It's Friday. It's Monday. Oh, God. I wish it was Friday. So we get ourselves a new John Oliver as a treat. Surprise. Again, all of us has been saying that this would happen. We've pointed to the fact that this happened with Nazi Germany. A bunch of capitalists got together. They had a meeting with the fascists, and the fascists were like, don't worry, we got your back. All like pro-worker shit is bullshit. Fund us, and we've got your back against the commies and the socialists. And that's exactly what happened. Around for the beginning of the internet. This is how it went. I want you to imagine 1997. I'm in 8th grade. I'm in my parents. We're in a house they were renting. They didn't own a home at that point when I was in 8th grade. And it was 2 a.m. 56K modem connected. And line by line, we were really rich on the fucking rental house. Wow, we were really balling out with our rental house in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I was balling.
Or liable for anything that it did.
Computers and things like that. Like, my dad was definitely into... Thanks, Pio. Thanks, appreciate you. Do you remember your ISP back then? It was AOL, of course. AOL used to send you CDs in the mail, and it'd be like 1,000 hours free. You're like, bitch, I already have AOL, and they'd be sending you more email, more CDs. I wonder how many CDs they've sent. They also, I think he also had CompuServe before AOL. See shit.
Problem, especially on a website like, say,
and gore, and just like the worst crap ever. Person who works less in the entire country. It's John Oliver. Let's be fucking honest with ourselves. He makes the show like 10 of these shows a fucking year, maybe 20 if he's lucky. Then what else is he doing? Is he making other shows? Is he writing things? Is he producing movies? Like, someone show me what he's been doing. This is like, to call his job part-time would be insulting part-time workers.
Crucially, Devon Nunes' cow has a First Amendment right to call Representative Nunes a treasonous cowpoke.
Liberals want to go back to 2019 so bad. They want to go back to 2019 so bad. They're living in this fucking, like, alternate dimension where Kamala Harris's progressive laptop story should have been censored. Period. Like, there's no, like, I know liberals are mad, or liberals have convinced themselves that Hunter Biden's laptop was not a national story. It was a national story. It should have been covered. I don't care that it was stolen. Who gives a fuck? Like, what? Like, it's an absurdity. You know, it's an absurdity. He's a 45-year-old adult man who is drafting off of his father's name to make money. He was on the fucking Amtrak national board. This is not a private citizen. This is not a child, okay? His laptop is a matter of national concern, and so are the details. Too fucking bad. You don't want it to be true? Don't run for president. Because it was stolen? I don't give a fuck. Who gives a shit if it was stolen or not? Oh, sorry, you're trying to give me the Pentagon Papers? That was stolen. I don't want to see it. What? Who gives a shit?
Fucking laptop. I'm afraid it is.
Okay, but that's not an argument, man. Like, with all due respect to John Oliver, they tried to suppress the story. They did. Now, they failed to do so, but that doesn't mean that they didn't, and it doesn't mean that it was okay to do. Like, come on, your inspiration, your coverage of the German election was informative. I joined the DSA. I'm going to be their treasurer, make agitprop videos. Could you make video scripts for you to be able to look over? Oh, no. I can't commit to anything like that. No. But I appreciate the support, but no. I'm going to make my own stuff, and then we'll figure it out going forward. But as far as me reviewing the other people's shit, no. That's my job. So I don't do that for, like, other people. But I'm saying no right now.
I can understand Zuckerberg's feelings being hurt by the president with Trump, but I do get that if Facebook and Instagram are where
we just have to find the ethical capitalist. See if we find the ethical capitalist will be good.
You may not be ready to take that step. Just
because they thought the audience would be like, yeah, in Gaza they did, and they were like, no, we weren't talking about Gaza. They had to say Myanmar just to clarify.
Fire the team that would know.
I'm just glad.
Is there another genocide? I don't know.
He's gonna grow.
Was also full of Russian spies and bots, some teenagers disguised as adults and some adults disguised as teenagers, getting together at all hours of the day or night to say whatever they want, including conspiracy theories plus variations on. But the Nazis also had some good ideas, and also now you are the mayor and police of your town square.
They make it sound like Meta is better than E and not going mask off. It's so libbed off. But yeah, these John Oliver is just not hitting. He's just not hitting the way he used to hit.
Jeffrey Sachs is about to give a total.
I wanted to watch some of this Jeffrey Sachs talk because it's very good. We're probably not going to watch all of it, but I wanted to show you this Jeffrey Sachs talk at the I think this was at the EU Parliament, and I did listen to this already, so I might be able to skip around, but it was really, really good and kind of explains what I think is a necessary future for Europe, which is break away from the United States, for the love of God.
Talk here in the European Parliament. Enjoy it.
When the Soviet Union ended in 1991, the United States literally believed this is now a U.S. world, and we will do as we want. The wars in the Middle East, Serbia, the wars in Africa, these are wars
we'll talk
that
about
the
Bongino
United
tomorrow.
States
It'll be
led
funnier.
And caused. And this has been true for more than 40 years. Europe has not had any foreign policy during this period that I can figure out. No voice, no unity, no clarity, only American loyalty. Please don't have American officials as head of Europe. Have European officials. Have a European foreign policy. You're going to be living with Russia for a long time, so please negotiate with Russia. Trump and President Putin will agree to end the war. If Europe does all its great warmongering, it doesn't matter. The war is ending. Not one word is told to the American people about anything, or to you, or by any of your newspapers these days. This idea that Putin's reconstructing the Russian Empire, this is childish propaganda. So the war started. What was Putin's intention in the war? I can tell you what his intention was. When Zelensky said in 7 days, let's negotiate, I know the details of this exquisitely. I flew to Ankara to listen in detail to what the mediators were doing. Ukraine walked away unilaterally from a near agreement. Why? Because the United States told them to. I begged the Ukrainians, and I had a track record with the Ukrainians. I advised the Ukrainians. I'm not anti-Ukrainian, I'm pro-Ukrainian completely. I said, save your lives, save your sovereignty, save your territory, be neutral. Don't listen to the Americans. I repeated to them the famous adage of Henry Kissinger, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal.
Above all, I want to welcome Professor Jeffrey Sachs. And today, Jeff is probably the person in the world to speak up for peace, everywhere for peace, which is all these things combined. And therefore, I'm very happy that you're here. And I'm here since 6 months in this parliament. And for somebody who worked for the UN, I was actually quite shocked to learn that this parliament speaks only about war. I think we have now to rethink what we want to do. And I hope the European Union will also come, because I'm pro-European Union, will come to realize that we have also to see how we seek peace and how we manage peace and how we create, again, a peaceful Europe. And Jeff might give us, for these things, some insight. Thank you very much.
I've watched the events very close up in Eastern Europe, the former Soviet Union, Russia, very closely.
If you don't know who Jeffrey Sachs is, basically he's an economist who did a lot of the shock doctrine shit to Russia. And I think in particular he was the guy in Poland. But fundamentally, he was part of like some of the first advisors that went into some of these former Soviet systems. And basically, I feel like the best way to describe him now is someone who is racked with regret and is in opposition to the world order that he helped create. And so he has all of those like deep connections and relationships with the very, very top. So he has a perspective that's coming from the system, but has become completely disillusioned with it and is criticizing it, but in a highly informed fashion. He seems pretty pro Putin. Yeah, that's what brain dead liberals would say. That's literally what brain dead liberals would say. His analysis is just realism, which is the idea that Russia is a powerful country that we can't just simply impose our will upon, and that we actually have to act with diplomacy and rationality, and not just act like we're the big bully of the world and we can control it and we can make our own reality, which we cannot do.
36 years. I was an advisor to the Polish government in 1989, to President Gorbachev in 1990 and 91, to President Yeltsin in 1991 to 1993, to President Kuchma of Ukraine in 1993-94. I helped introduce the Estonian currency. I helped several countries in former Yugoslavia, especially Slovenia. I've watched the events very close up for 36 years. After the Maidan, I was asked by the new government to come to Kiev, and I was taken around the Maidan, and I learned a lot of things firsthand. I've been in touch with Russian leaders for more than 30 years. I know the American political leadership close up. Our previous Secretary of Treasury was my macroeconomics teacher 51 years ago, or just to give you an idea. So we were very close friends for a half century. I know all of these people. I just want to say this because what I want to explain in my point of view is not secondhand, it's not ideology, it's what I've seen with my own eyes and experienced during this period. In my understanding of the events that have befallen Europe in many contexts, and I'll include not only the Ukraine crisis, but Serbia, 1999, the wars in the Middle East, including Iraq, Syria, the wars in Africa, including...
All right, hold on, Chad. I gotta show you this.
Love.
That's right. What cause is dear to your heart?
Cause is dear to my Israel, defense of Israel.
Dan Bongino. The cause that's the most near and dear to my heart is the defense of Israel. Man, why were people watching this incompetent moron? There may be something to that. I wonder why. I guess I understand why Ethan doesn't care that this dipshit is the deputy FBI director.
Sudan, Somalia, Libya. These are to a very significant extent that would surprise you, perhaps, and would be denounced about what I'm about to say. These are wars that the United States led and caused. And this has been true for more than 40 years. What happened, more than 30 years, I should say, to be more precise. The United States came to the view, especially in 1990, 91, and then with the end of the Soviet Union, that the U.S. now ran the world, and that the U.S. did not have to heed anybody's views, red lines, concerns, security viewpoints, or any international obligations, or any UN framework. I'm sorry to put it so plainly, but I do want you to understand. I tried very hard in 1991 to get help for Gorbachev, who I think was the greatest statesman of our modern time. I recently read the archived memo of the National Security Council discussion of my proposal, how they completely dismissed it and laughed it off the table when I said that the United States should help the Soviet Union in financial stabilization and in making its reforms. And the memo documents, including some of my former colleagues at Harvard in particular, saying we will do the minimum that we will do to prevent disaster, but the minimum. It's not our job to help. Quite the contrary, it's not our interest to help. When the Soviet Union ended in 1991, the view became even more exaggerated. And I can name chapter and verse, but the view was we run the show. Cheney, Wolfowitz, and many other names that you will have come to know literally believed this is now a U.S. world, and we will do as we want. We will clean up from the former Soviet Union. We will take out any remaining allies. Countries like Iraq, Syria, and so forth will go. And we've been experiencing this foreign policy for now essentially 33 years. Europe has paid a heavy price for this because Europe has not had any foreign policy during this period that I can figure out. No voice, no unity, no clarity, no European interests, only American loyalty. There were moments where there were disagreements, and very, I think, wonderful disagreements, especially in the last time of significance was 2003 in the Iraq War, when France and Germany said we don't support the United States going around the UN Security Council for this war. That war, by the way, was directly concocted by Netanyahu and his colleagues in the US Pentagon. I'm not saying that it was a link or mutuality. I'm saying it was a direct war. That was a war carried out for Israel. It was a war that Paul Wolfowitz and Douglas Feith coordinated with Netanyahu. And that was the last time that Europe had a voice. And I spoke with European leaders then, and they were very clear, and it was quite wonderful. Europe lost its voice entirely after that, but especially in 2008. Now, what happened...
This is kind of the advantage of the Donald Trump presidency, is I think a breakup between the United States and Europe would redound positively for the world in the future. Right now, European foreign policy is being dictated by the United States, and it would be far better if the European Union was serving as a counterbalance on a number of issues. For example, on Israel, I think Europe is much more poised to be critical of Israel if it wasn't the protectorate of the United States on other issues. If NATO collapses, then it's much more likely that the US's support of Israel may come with its own consequences of its own. And this is actually something that's very interesting because the conservative leader, Merz, has said Europe should distance itself from the United States. He has said, oh, fuck, what did he say? God damn it, I had this article and then it like updated to something else. Fuck. Shit. But anyway, basically the idea is NATO is in deep, deep, deep trouble.
And after 1991 to get to 2008 is that the United States decided that unipolarity meant that NATO would enlarge somewhere from Brussels to Vladivostok, step by step. There would be no end to eastward enlargement of NATO. This would be the U.S. unipolar world. If you play the game of Risk as a child, like I did, this is the U.S. idea, to have the peace on every part of the board. Any place without a U.S. military base is an enemy, basically. Neutrality is a dirty word in the U.S. political lexicon, perhaps the dirtiest word. At least if you're an enemy, we know you're an enemy. If you are neutral, you're subversive, because then you're really against us, because you're not telling us. You're pretending to be neutral. So this was the mindset, and the decision was taken formally in 1994. President Clinton signed off on NATO enlargement to the east. You will recall.
Here's what he said. I found it on a Fox News coverage. He said, Germany's Chancellor-elect Friedrich Merz, leader of the center-right Christian Democratic Union Party, said his absolute priority upon taking the top job would be to secure Europe so that it could achieve independence from Washington. I don't believe him, but I'm going to hope he's telling the truth. I would have never would have thought I would have to say something like this on a TV show, but after Donald Trump's remarks last week, it's clear that the government does not care much about the fate of Europe. My absolute priority will be to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible so that, step by step, we could really achieve independence from the USA. The comments by the incoming chancellor, who has been described as an ardent transatlanticist, are significant because they could signify a major shift from previous post-World War II relations with the U.S. and Europe. In speaking about the upcoming NATO summit, Merz suggested that the NATO alliance in its current form is in jeopardy and said European nations may have to establish an independent European defense capability much more quickly. Mike Waltz, Trump's national security advisor, reaffirmed the U.S. position on NATO last week, saying, we fully support our NATO allies, we fully support Article 5, but it's time for European allies to step up. But concern has also mounted over whether the U.S. will pull troops stationed in Europe. Why the fuck do we have troops in Europe? Get them out. Get them the fuck out. These are rich countries. It's an absurdity. Get our fucking troops out and get them home. It's absurd. Merz already made a phone call to invite Netanyahu to Germany. Of course. Of course, he's a conservative in Germany. Of course, he's pro-Zionist.
Recall that in February 7th, 1991, Hans-Dietrich Genscher and James Baker III spoke with Gorbachev. Genscher gave a press conference afterwards where he explained, NATO will not move eastward. We will not take advantage of the dissolution of the Warsaw Pact. And understand that was in a juridical context, not a casual context. This was the end of World War II being negotiated for German reunification. And an agreement was made that NATO will not move 1 inch eastward. And it was explicit, and it is in countless documents. And just look up National Security Archive of George Washington University, and you can get dozens of documents. It's a website called What Gorbachev Heard About NATO. Take a look, because everything you're told by the U.S. is a lie about this. But the archives are perfectly clear. So the decision was taken in 1994 to expand NATO all the way to Ukraine. This is a project. This is not one administration or another. This is a U.S. government project that started more than 30 years ago.
The U.S. will never close down Ramstein. It's the little bastion of U.S. power on the continent. Of course it is. I didn't realize that Mike from PA was Central Committee on Twitch. That's on me. Yeah, of course it's you. Of course it's on you. That's also on me for not knowing how to market or brand myself. The fact that people say that to me is very funny because it just shows that being popular on the internet is a skill issue, because I have like 40,000 followers on Twitter and 90,000 followers here on Twitch. So I've just literally gotten big on 2 separate platforms, people not even knowing. That's called skill issue. No, I'm kidding.
1997.
Honest to God, I hate Twitter. I hate Twitter. In fact, my Twitter time, I need to change platforms with it. I need to change my Twitter time to a different platform. I was thinking about TikTok, and I just need to get comfortable with like making videos on TikTok. Like that's the main problem for me is just like getting over the hump of making videos. I just hate Twitter. Twitter sucks shit.
Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote The Grand Chessboard.
Time to get a third name and hit YouTube hard. So true. So true.
Not just musings of Mr. Brzezinski. That is the presentation of the decisions of the United States government explained to the public, which is how these books work. And the book describes the eastward enlargement of Europe.
Okay, I don't think we care about this, so we could skip over the NATO enlargement. I think basically the point is the United States looked at Europe after the post-Cold War and said, we're going to expand NATO all the way up to Russia's border. And Russia said, don't do that. And that leads us to the Euromaidan.
In 2014, the U.S. worked actively to overthrow Yanukovych. Everybody knows the phone call intercepted by my Columbia University colleague, Victoria Nuland, and the U.S. Ambassador Peter Piot.
I can't remember if I told you this or if I only told Washington this, that when I talked to Jeff Feltman this morning, he had a new name for the UN guy, Robert Seri. Did I write you that this morning?
Yeah, I saw that.
He's now gotten both Seri and Ban Ki-moon to agree that Seri could come in Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, fuck the EU.
No, exactly. And I think we've got to do something to make it stick together, because you can be pretty sure that if it does start to gain altitude, the Russians will be working behind the scenes to try to torpedo it.
You don't get better evidence. The Russians intercepted her call and they put it on the internet. Listen to it. It's fascinating. I know all these people. By the way, by doing that, they all got promoted in the Biden administration. That's the job. Now, when the Maidan occurred, I was called immediately. Oh, Professor Sachs, the new Ukrainian prime minister would like to see you to talk about the economic crisis, because I'm pretty good at that. And so I flew to Kiev and I was walked around the Maidan, and I was told how the U.S. paid the money for all the people around the Maidan. Spontaneous revolution of dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, please, where do all these media outlets come from? Where does all this organization come from? Where do all these buses come from? Where do all these people called in come from? Are you kidding? This is organized effort. It's not a secret, except to citizens of Europe and the United States. Everyone else understands it quite clearly. Then came Minsk, and especially Minsk II, which, by the way, was modeled on South Tyrolean.
Minsk and Minsk II are basically, they were agreements between Europe, the United States, and Russia and Ukraine about the crisis in the eastern frontiers, the Donbass region, which was the foundation of the political support for the coup president, right? So it's sort of like if Donald Trump had successfully done January 6th and California, like the West Coast, had rebelled against the United States. That was kind of the situation in Ukraine. There was a successful coup, and the people that were the most strongly in favor of the coup politician, started to rebel. Obviously, with the support of Russian, special forces and intelligence operations and little green men. There's no doubt that was also propped up by Russia and influenced and pushed by Russia. But Minsk II was a diplomatic settlement that called for a number of concessions from the Ukrainians so that they could keep the eastern regions, but they would have to give them certain concessions about, Russian language and more autonomy and things like that.
Autonomy. And the Belgians could have related to Minsk II very well. It said there should be autonomy for the Russian-speaking regions in the east of Ukraine. It was supported unanimously by the UN Security Council. The United States and Ukraine decided it was not to be enforced. Germany and France, which were the guarantors of the Normandy process, let it go. And it was absolutely another direct American unipolar action, with Europe, as usual, playing completely useless subsidiary role, even though it was a guarantor of the agreement. Trump, one, raised the armaments. There were many thousands of deaths in the shelling by Ukraine in the Donbass. There was no Minsk II agreement. And then Biden came into office. And again, I know all these people. I used to be a member of the Democratic Party. I now am strictly sworn to be a member of no party, because both are the same anyway, and because this is the Democrats became complete warmongers over time, and there was not one voice about peace, just like most of your parliamentarians, the same way. So at the end of 1991, Putin put on the table a last effort in two security agreement drafts, one with Europe and one with the United States. The U.S. put on the table December 15th, 2021. I had an hour call with Jake Sullivan in the White House begging, Jake, avoid the war. You can avoid the war. All you have to do is say NATO will not enlarge to Ukraine. And he said to me, oh, NATO's not going to enlarge to Ukraine. Don't worry about it. I said, Jake, say it publicly. No, we can't say it publicly. Say, Jake, you're going to have a war over something that isn't even going to happen? He said, don't worry, Jeff, there will be no war. These are not very bright people. I'm telling you, if I can give you my honest view, they're not very bright people. and I've dealt with them for more than 40
Jake
years.
Sullivan is not very bright.
They talk to themselves. They don't talk to anybody else. They play game theory. In non-cooperative game theory, you don't talk to the other side. You just make your strategy. This is the essence of game theory. It's not negotiation theory. It's not peacemaking theory. It is unilateral, non-cooperative theory, if you know formal game theory. That's what they play. It started at the Rand Corporation. That's what they still play. In 2019, there's a paper by Rand, How Do We Extend Russia? Do you know they wrote a paper, which Biden followed? How do we annoy Russia? That's literally the strategy. How do we annoy Russia? We're trying to provoke it, trying to make it break apart, maybe have regime change, maybe have unrest, maybe have economic crisis. That's what you call your ally. Are you kidding? So I had a long and frustrating phone call with Sullivan. I was standing out in the freezing cold. I happened to be trying to have a ski day. And there I was, Jake, don't have the war. Oh, there'll be no war, Jeff. We know a lot of what happened the next month, which is that they refused to negotiate. The stupidest idea of NATO is the so-called open door policy. Are you kidding? NATO reserves the right to go where it wants without any neighbor having any say whatsoever. Well, I tell the Mexicans and the Canadians, don't try it. You know, Trump may want to take over Canada. So Canada could say to China, why don't you build a military base in Ontario? I wouldn't advise it. And the United States would not say, well, it's an open door. That's their business. I mean, they can do what they want. That's not our business. But grown-ups in Europe,
guys,
repeat
look
this.
what the New York Times just wrote for the German elections. This is so funny. The left lives. How TikTok helped liberals surprise in Germany. Struggling a month ago, the far left Die Linke party surged into parliament by riding a backlash against conservative immigration policy. Like, I just tweeted. I was like, this is the funniest thing about American politics, the utter refusal to describe anything that is to the left of liberalism. You're a far left liberal, New York Times. By the way, chat, like, I've seen people criticizing the left for celebrating, and it's like, shut the fuck up. You're a dumb fuck. You're an absolute dumb fuck. There, I said it. We live in America. Do you have a left-wing party winning 8% of the vote? Do you have a left-wing party with 60-some members of the Congress? Which would be like 30-some here. Do you, motherfucker? I didn't think so. Shut the fuck up. Like, come on. You're voting for Kamala Harris here. Like, let's shut your fucking mouth.
In Europe, in your commission, your high representative. This is nonsense stuff. This is not even baby geopolitics. This is just not thinking at all. So the war started. What was Putin's intention in the war? I can tell you what his intention was. It was to force Zelensky to negotiate neutrality. And that happened within 7 days of the start of the invasion. You should understand this, not the propaganda that's written about this. Oh, that they failed and he was going to take over Ukraine. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, understand something basic. The idea was to keep NATO, and what is NATO? It's the United States, off of Russia's border. No more, no less. I should add one very important point. Why are they so interested? First, because if China or Russia decided to have a military base on the Rio Grande or in the Canadian border, not only would the United States freak out, we'd have war within about 10 minutes, but because the United States unilaterally abandoned the anti-ballistic missile treaty in 2002 and ended the nuclear arms control framework by doing so. And this is extremely important to understand. The nuclear arms control framework is based on trying to block a first strike. The ABM treaty was a critical component of that. The U.S. unilaterally walked out of the ABM treaty in 2002. It blew a Russian gasket. So everything I've been describing is in the context of the destruction of the nuclear framework as well. And starting in 2010, the U.S. put in Aegis missile systems in Poland and then in Romania. And Russia doesn't like that. And one of the issues on the table in December and January, December 2021, January 2022, was, does the United States claim the right to put...
What I'm confused about is what does that mean for Finland? Shouldn't have Russia reacted way stronger than that? I mean, they were already... They couldn't. They couldn't react stronger. They were already involved in a war in Ukraine. And so NATO was able to take advantage of that. And it sucks. It sucks because, you know, Finland had some of the best outcomes in the world because they weren't in NATO. They weren't subsumed to the American power doctrine.
Put missile systems in Ukraine. And Blinken told Lavrov in January 2022, the United States reserves the right to put missile systems wherever it wants.
54% of U.S. adults are favorable of Israel. 33% of Democrats, 48% of independents, and 83% of Republicans. 67% approve of Mexico. 63% approve of Ukraine. 40% approve of Cuba. 32% approve of Palestine. 17% approve of Russia. 38% approve of Saudi Arabia. That's crazy. 65% approval of India. 29% approval of China, with independents having the highest approval. Independents in. 13% approve of Iran. 14% approval of North Korea. 60% of Republicans approve of North Korea. Let's go.
That's
liberals hating North Korea more than Republicans.
Putative
That's
ally.
hilarious.
And now let's put intermediate missile systems back in Germany. The United States walked out of the INF Treaty unilaterally in 2019. There is no nuclear arms framework right now. None. When Zelensky said in 7 days, let's negotiate, I know the details of this exquisitely because I've talked to all the parties in detail. Within a couple of weeks, there was a document exchanged that President Putin had approved, that Lavrov had presented, that was being managed by the Turkish mediators. I flew to Ankara to listen in detail to what the mediators were doing. Ukraine walked away unilaterally from a near agreement. Why? Because the United States told them to. Because the UK added icing to the cake by having Bojo go in early April to Ukraine and explain. And he has...
Unfortunately, like, these takes... Like, Jeffrey Sachs is completely right about all these things. But, like, there are no American politicians that are, like, adopting him. I mean, he was an advisor to Bernie, but... I guess Bernie, but...
Recently, and if your security is in the hands of Boris Johnson, God help us all. Keith Starmer turns out to be even worse. It's unimaginable, but it is true. Boris Johnson has explained, and you can look it up on the website, that what's at stake here is Western hegemony, not Ukraine, Western hegemony. Michael and I met at the Vatican with a group in the spring of 2022, where we wrote a document explaining nothing good can come out of this war for Ukraine. Negotiate now, because anything that takes time will mean massive amounts of deaths, risk of nuclear escalation, and likely loss of the war. I want to change one word from what we wrote then. Nothing was wrong in that document. And since that document, since the U.S. talked the negotiators away from the table, about 1 million Ukrainians have died or been severely wounded. And the American senators, who are as nasty and cynical and corrupt as imaginable, say this is wonderful expenditure of our money because no Americans are dying. It's the pure proxy war. One of our senators nearby me, Blumenthal, says this out loud. Mitt Romney says this out loud. It's best money America can spend. No Americans are dying. It's unreal. Now,
well, if you just don't consider Eastern Europeans to be human, then it's a win-win.
To bring us up to yesterday.
Ukrainians think they're considered white. Isn't that funny?
This failed. This project failed. The idea of the project was that Russia would...
There's like this politics in Eastern Europe where they're like, the more we're like anti-Russian, the more we're going to be treated as white. And it's like, no, you're not. The Germans see you as disposable cannon fodder in the borderland region. You are not considered white, Polish person. In America you are, but you ain't in Europe.
Hold its hand.
Panamanian
The idea all along was Russia can't resist, as Zbigniew Brzezinski explained in 1997. The Americans thought we have the upper hand. We're going to win because we're going to bluff them. They're not really going to fight. They're not really going to mobilize. The nuclear option of cutting them out of SWIFT, that's going to do them in. The economic sanctions, that's going to do them in. The HIMARS, that's going to do them in. The ATACMS, the F-16s.
Did you see the Azov battalion guy doing a Reddit AMA?
Honestly, I've listened to this for 70 years. I've listened to it as semi-understanding, I'd say, for about 56 years. They speak nonsense every day, my country, my government. This is so familiar to me, completely familiar. I begged the Ukrainians, and I had a track record with the Ukrainians. I advised the Ukrainians. I'm not anti-Ukrainian, I'm pro-Ukrainian completely. I said, save your lives, save your sovereignty, save your territory, be neutral. Don't listen to the Americans. I repeated to them the famous adage of Henry Kissinger, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. Okay, so let me repeat that for Europe. To be an enemy.
And this is what I wanted to talk about. And this is what I think is really, really exciting, which is Europe divorced from the United States. If Europe divorces itself from the United States, we live in a multipolar world. That's it. The United States, 350, 375 million people. Europe, 500, 550 million people. An economy that's a little bit smaller than the U.S. now because of all the austerity. But that means more competition. That would be an outstanding outcome and severely weaken U.S. ability to engage in a new Cold War with China.
You've mentioned that the European Union needs to formulate its own foreign policy. In the past, the German Franco alliance was a big driver for those policies. Now with the Ukraine war, arguably that received a crack. Do you think that in the future, when the European Union is going to formulate its new foreign policy, that they're going to be again on the front seat, or should it be other countries or other blocs trying to make that change? Thank you very much.
Oh, it's hard. It's hard because, of course, you don't yet have a constitution for Europe, which really underpins a European foreign policy. And it can't be by unanimity. There has to be a structure in which Europe can speak as Europe, even with some dissent, but with a European policy. I don't want to oversimplify how to get there exactly, but even with the structures you have, you could do a lot better with negotiating directly. The first rule is your diplomats should be diplomats, not secretaries of war. Honestly, that would go halfway, at least, to where you want to go. A diplomat is a very special kind of talent. A diplomat is trained to
They're going to do
sit
colonialism
together.
in Africa. They never stopped. Europe never stopped doing colonialism in Africa. What do you think? What do you think France does in West Africa? What are you talking about? You never stopped doing doing colonialism.
With the other side, and to listen, to shake hands, to smile, and to be pleasant. It's very hard. It's a skill. It's training. It's a profession. It's not a game. You need that kind of diplomacy. I'm sorry, we are not hearing anything like that. I'll just make a couple complaints. First, Europe is not NATO, as I said. I thought Stoltenberg was the worst, but I was wrong. It just keeps getting worse. Could someone in NATO stop talking, for God's sake, about more war? And could NATO stop speaking for Europe? And Europe stop thinking it's NATO? This is the first absolute point. Second, I'm sorry, but your high representative vice presidents need to become diplomats. Diplomacy means going to Moscow, inviting your Russian counterpart here, discussing. This doesn't happen till now. So this is really my
That's
point.
because everybody's brain is rotted into World War II, total war. Everybody lives in this, like, prior to World War II, this was the reality. And after, and then there's World War II, right? And everybody lives in this period. And World War II was this very rare period of fascism and militarism and extreme, where total war was fightable without also threatening the entire planet's survival with thermonuclear exchange. Now we don't live in the World War II world anymore, where you could just be like, I demand absolute surrender. It's not a thing. But everyone is in that kind of like World War II brain. This war was always going to require a negotiated peace. Ukraine was never going to invade Moscow. It's just a nonsensical, dumb fucking situation. And every liberal has been trained to bark like a dog whenever you say peace treaty.
Now, I believe that Europe should become more integrated and more unified in the years ahead. I'm a strong believer in subsidiarity. So we were discussing, I don't think housing policy is really Europe's main issue. I think this can be handled at the local level or at the national level. I don't see it as a European issue. But I don't see foreign policy as being a 27-country issue. I see it being as a European issue. And I see security being at a European level. So I think things need to be readjusted. But I'd like to see more Europe for truly European issues and maybe less Europe for things that are properly subsidiary to Europe at the national and the local level. And I hope that such an evolution can take place. You know, when the world talks about great powers right now, they talk about US, Russia, China. I include India. And I really want to include Europe. And I really want to include Africa as an African Union. And I want that to happen. But you'll notice on the list, Europe doesn't show up right now. And this is because there is no European foreign policy.
Okay. Maybe after you, one more, and then when I close. Is there anybody who wanted? I would prefer a woman, actually. If I'm
You're there.
You wanted? No, first this gentleman, and then you close, huh? Okay, sorry for this one. It's a...
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Professor, for this very courageous speech, very clear speech also that you made. I'm an MEP from Luxembourg. My question is the following. What are the long-term consequences of this lost war? We lost the war, now we have an uncertain future for NATO.
Yeah, Jana, we did. I hate the trailer, but I'm sure... It's fucking Disney slop trailer where it's like, look, random explosions! And it's like, fuck you. That's the opposite of what makes Andor good. It's like, Andor is good because the explosions are like not just stormtroopers getting shot. They have meaning. So I hate the slop trailer, but it's Disney expected, you know.
Clearly, and you refer to it, the marginalization of Europe. We have a strengthening of the BRICS countries, which can be rivals in many respects. So will there be a future for a collective West over the next 20 or 30 years? Thank you very much.
I don't believe there is a collective West. I believe that there is a United States and Europe that are in some areas in parallel interests and in many areas not in parallel interest. I want Europe to lead sustainable development, climate transformation, global decency. I believe if the world looked more like Europe, it'd be a happier, more peaceful, safer world. And longevity and better food, by the way. But just saying, in any event, Europe has a vocation that is rather different from the American tradition and, frankly, from the Anglo-Saxon tradition, because it's been 200 years of Anglo-Saxon hegemony or aspirational hegemony. The British still believe they run the world. It's amazing what nostalgia means.
I can't believe the British was actually like, I get it. Like, if you've eaten British food, you would want to leave as well. Like, I get it. Like, it does make sense. The worst weather in the world and the worst food. Like, of course they were all constructing ships to sail away. Like, I get it. I would have done it too. One of my favorite things about history is like the Brits would lose so many ships because like British ships would go to the Polynesian islands and then they would just disappear. Like the crews would just like they'd be in Tahiti or something and like going like, oh my god, this is the life. And then their like officer would be like, it's time to go back to Britain. And they would be like, I'm not eating another jellied eel. And they'd like chop the heads off all the officers and like mutiny. And I get it. Like, you know, I would have done the same.
They don't even stop. It's almost like a Monty Python skit, actually. But in any event, where was I? I'm thinking of Monty Python when the knight gets all his limbs cut off and says, everything's fine, I'm victorious. That's Britain, unfortunately. And so it's really terrible. So no, I don't believe in the collective West. I don't believe in the global South. I don't believe in all these geographies don't even make sense because I'm actually, you know, I look at maps a lot and the global South is mostly in the North and the West is not even West. And so I don't even understand what this is about. I do believe that we could be in a true age of abundance if we got our heads on straight. we're in the biggest technological advance in human history. It's truly amazing what can be done right now. You know, I marvel at the fact that somebody who knows no chemistry won the Nobel Peace Prize for chemistry because he's very good at deep neural networks, a genius, Demis Hassabis. They figured out protein folding that generations of biochemists spent their whole lives on. And now DeepMind figured out how to do it, by the thousands of proteins. We have friends that spent their entire life on one protein, brilliant friends. And now what we can do. So if actually, and same with renewable energy, as everybody knows, the prices come down by more than 2 orders of magnitude, the costs. We could transform the planet, we could protect the climate system, we could protect biodiversity, we could ensure every child gets a good education. We could do so many wonderful things right now. And so what do we need to do that? In my view, we need peace, most importantly. And my basic point is there are no deep reasons for conflict anywhere. As every conflict I study is just a mistake. It's not, we are not struggling for Lebensraum. That idea that came from Malthus and that became a Nazi idea was always a wrong idea. It was a mistake, a fundamental intellectual mistake. An intellectual mistake, by the way, because leading scientists adopted the idea that we had race wars, we had national wars, we had wars of survival because we don't have enough on the planet. As an economist, I can tell you, we have plenty on the planet for everybody's development. Plenty.
The real deep cause of conflict that Jeffrey is not saying here and needs to be acknowledged is the capitalist class is insatiable and always wants more. They will never consent to an equitable distribution of resources or democratic control of the economy. And these nationalist wars are used as puppet wars for the different competing capitalist classes at different segments of the international bourgeoisie jockeying for various power. If you want to have peace, if you want to have global development, you must destroy the capitalist class, root and stem.
We're not in a conflict with China. We're not in a conflict with Russia. If we calm down, if you ask about the long term is very good, thank you. The long term, if we don't blow ourselves up, is very good. And so this is what we should aim for.
He's right about that.
A positive shared vision under international law. Because of our technology, things operate at a regional scale now. It used to be it was villages, then it was small areas, then it was unification of countries. Now it's regional. That's not just because regions are wonderful. It's because the underlying technological realities say Europe should be an integrated area by transport, by fast rail, by digital, and so there's Europe. The politics follows the technological realities to a very important extent. We're in a world of regions now. So Europe should be Europe with subsidiarity. Don't lose all of the wonderful, wonderful national and local elements. But Europe should be Europe. So the good side is I want Europe to have diplomacy, for example, with ASEAN. I spend a lot of time with the ASEAN countries. If the EU Green Deal, wonderful idea. I said many years ago, okay, to the ASEAN leaders, make an ASEAN Green Deal. And then talk with the Europeans so that you have this wonderful relationship, trade, investment, technology. So last year they announced an ASEAN Green Deal. What did Europe do about it? Nothing. It said, sorry, we're in the Ukraine war, thank you. No interest. So this is my point. The prospects are very positive if we construct the peace.
Because we have to go, I get all the time messages that I should leave the room. Can you do something very short?
Yeah. Do you think that a way out of the conflict is some kind of style of Finlandization? And then, is that what you would have? Is that what you would have liked to see in Sweden and Finland's foreign policy as an example? Is that instead of them becoming members of NATO, is that the way that you would have liked to see these countries handle their foreign policy? And do you think that these countries that border Russia should just kind of succumb to their fate? That okay, we can't provoke Russia. This is the way we have to live.
Yeah, very good. Excellent question. And let me just report one part about Finlandization. Finlandization landed Finland #1 in the World Happiness Report year after year. Rich, successful, happy, and secure. That's pre-NATO. So Finlandization was a wonderful thing. #1 in the world, when Sweden and Finland and Austria were neutral. Bravo. Smart. When Ukraine was neutral, smart. If you have two superpowers, keep them apart a little bit. You don't have to be right with your nose up against each other, especially if one of them, the U.S., is pushing its nose into the other one. And so Finlandization, to my mind, has a very positive connotation. So does Austrianization.
Me too.
Austria, in 1955, signed its neutrality. The Soviet army left. And Austria is a wonderful place, by the way. Absolutely wonderful. And so this is basic how to avoid conflict. If the United States had any sense at all, it would have left these countries as a neutral space in between the U.S. military and
Ukraine was
Russia.
neutral. Look what happened. No, it wasn't. It was trying desperately to side with the United States. It was inviting in American and CIA ops. It was engaged. It was not neutral. It was not neutral. In fact, they declared that they would never declare neutrality. That was one of Russia's main war aims, is Ukraine to say they'll never join NATO. So you're just wrong. This guy, so...
The U.S. lost it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me... I just want to end with an appeal. I think we both agree that we will have the war will end within a month or two. And that means the fighting will end. It doesn't mean that we will have peace in Europe. So. The peace in Europe, that has to be done by us, by Europeans, not by a president from the United States. We have to create this peace, and that is Europe. It includes, of course, Belarus, Russia, and all these other countries. So we have to do something. And we are here at Parliament. As parliamentarians, we represent people. We are the
All right, everybody, that's going to be it for me today. I'm going to send you over to VO. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Sorry about the crash in the middle of the stream. That was very annoying. Tomorrow we're going to cover more of the issues that we didn't get today, like Dan Bongino. Oh, God. But we got through most of what I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much for hanging out. Stay safe out there. If you're in Germany, organize. You need to get yourselves prepared for what is coming. And I'll see you all soon. Stay safe out there. Solidarity forever, my friends. And of course, and this is the most pressing issue of our day, free Palestine, from the river into the sea. One state, one Palestinian state, where Palestinians and Jews can live side by side with equality and freedom of conscience and democracy and human rights. That's the future that I want. I want no ethnic supremacy. I want no religious supremacy. I want equality, pluralism, and freedom for all human beings. Christian, Jew, Muslim, Hindu, whatever you want to call, whatever religion, Jain, Shinto, Buddhist, freedom for everybody. All right, everybody, stay safe out there. Solidarity forever, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace out. Say hi to VO for me.